Chapter 2146. Ling Han stayed in the Four Seas Palace, comprehending great Tao every day and concocting alchemical pills in passing. Shang Jiwei was very patient. She had lived for who knew how many epochs, so she naturally did not mind waiting for 8 or 10 years, or 1 billion or 8 billion years. The reason she had such patience was naturally because she regarded Ling Han as her nephew. Otherwise, she would have directly killed him. But it was also unrealistic for Ling Han to leave the Four Seas city. Shang Jiwei would definitely not allow him to leave before handing over Hu Niu. Thus, he could only cultivate martial art and improve his alchemy. In the blink of an eye, 7 years had passed. 7 years in the outside world, and under the acceleration of the Black Tower, it was as long as 7,000 years, and the time spent comprehending Tao under the reincarnation tree was even more ridiculously long. Added with the fact that Shang Jiwei was extremely protective of him, giving him all the precious cultivation resources, his cultivation soared straight to the peak stage of the Earth's soul realm. If he did not have Shang Jiwei's support, Ling Han would probably need over 1,000 years to reach this step. Even the Black Tower was not omnipotent. From this, it could be seen that Shang Jiwei really treated him like a son, which also gave Ling Han a bit of a headache. In the future, if Hu Niu and Shang Jiwei became enemies, he would definitely help Hu Niu, but if he were to make a move against Shang Jiwei, that would be too ungrateful. Forget it, he would think about it later. The Rock Palace had Yang Soul Sea, Earth Soul Mountain, and the like, so would the Four Seas Palace not have such mystery realms? Of course they did. Thus, when Ling Han reached the peak stage of the Earth Soul realm, he went to the Heavenly Soul Pool to break through. Only a month later, he reached consummate level, successfully advancing into the Heavenly Soul tier, catching up to Hu Niu, the Empress, and the others in terms of cultivation level. And there was another piece of good news. The Empress and Hu Niu collected the source power of heaven and earth at about the same time. They could succeed because, firstly, their own talent in martial art was very high and qualified to make the source power of heaven and earth bow down, and secondly, the Black Dragon King used a secret technique to weaken the resistance of the source power of heaven and earth, allowing the two women to succeed so easily. Otherwise, even a celestial king would need tens of millions of years to successfully collect the source power of heaven and earth. Taking into account the acceleration of the flow of time in the Black Tower, the two women had only used 10,000 years. Ling Han. Hu Niu threw herself into Ling Han's arms, greedily absorbing the air on his body. Niu missed you so much. The process of collecting the source energy could not be distracted in the slightest. Otherwise, not only would all his previous efforts be wasted, the source energy would also leave. There was only a single chance to do this. Thus, Hu Niu was also patient. For her, this was really not a simple matter. Ling Han laughed loudly and spun 3 times on the spot with Hu Niu in his arms. The Empress also pounced over. She looked down upon the world, and she would express her feelings directly and straightforwardly. She would not take anyone's gaze seriously at all. Ling Han also picked up the Empress. He felt as if he had the whole world in his arms, and his heart also became incredibly determined. He definitely had to protect this happiness. Niu wants to go out and play. Hu Niu couldn't help but call out after acting coquettishly in Ling Han's arms for a while. She had a playful nature, and after continuously cultivating in seclusion for 10,000 years, she naturally could not hold herself back anymore. Ling Han's expression changed slightly. He shook his head and said, "Niu, you cannot leave this place for the time being." But Hu Niu's expression was filled with astonishment. Ling Han sighed. After a slight hesitation, he told her about the destruction of the Rock Palace at the hands of the Four Seas Palace. Wah, that detestable old demon, Niu is going to kill her. Hu Niu instantly shouted in fury after hearing this. She indeed did not like Long Yueshi interfering in her affairs, but after so many years, she had naturally developed a deep affection for Long Yueshi. She was like a mischievous granddaughter to her grandmother. She did not care whether the Rock Palace was destroyed or not, but Long Yueshi's death made her incredibly furious, and she wanted to jump out of the Black Tower to fight Shang Jiwei to the death. Ling Han naturally would not agree. He was just worried that Hu Niu would not appear, and if he went out, he would really be delivering himself to death. He continuously comforted and explained, and the Empress also let bygones be bygones, and persuaded Hunyo a little. Added with bewitching Maiden Ro and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden who came later, the four finally managed to temporarily convince Hunyo. Nyo wants to cultivate, Nyo wants to become a heavenly venerable, and beat that old demon up. Hunyo said with red eyes. This little girl had never liked cultivating, but now she said such words, which showed how sad and furious she was. Ling Han nodded. It was also a good thing that Hunyo could focus her grief on cultivation. Hopefully, this matter would not affect the little girl's personality, turning a cheerful person into a tool that only knew how to take revenge. He exited the Black Tower and began to daydream. 7 years had passed, and though Shang Jiwei still had not forced him, he had completely not found a way to leave. It seemed like only when he advanced into the Celestial King tier and possessed the qualifications to rival Shang Jiwei in terms of speed would he be able to escape and leave. What to do? If Hunyo could not leave the Black Tower, then she would not be able to break through to the Immortal Palace tier in this lifetime. How could this do? Just as he was feeling vexed, there was a knock on the door. In these 7 years, who knew how many people had come to visit him, and he was now clearly the most popular person in front of Shang Jiwei, who did not want to form a good relationship with him. However, he had always been cultivating in seclusion, and others could only be rejected at the door. Now that someone had come to visit, Ling Han naturally would not be surprised. At first, he had wanted to enter the Black Tower again, but after thinking about it, his mind was in a mess anyway, so he might as well find someone to talk to and divert his attention. He went to open the door, and saw a young man standing at the door. When he saw Ling Han, he immediately clasped his hands in greeting and said, "I am Fu He, a follower of Lord Lin Xian." Greetings, young Master Lin Xian's follower? Ling Han naturally did not have any good feelings towards Lin Xian, but as the saying went, one should not hit a smiling person. He could not be bothered to put on airs with a servant, so he smiled and asked, "What is the matter?" "It's like this. A mystery realm has recently been discovered in the wide transformation heaven, and has attracted many prodigies and elites to venture there. Lord Lin Xian and Lord Ran have both decided to go and take a look." Fu He's attitude was very humble. "Lord Lin Xian has sent me over to ask if young Master Ling is interested in going with us." Of course he was, but how could Shang Jiwei let him go? Moreover, would Lin Xian be so kind? He most likely wanted to make a move on him in the mystery realm. Ling Han smiled calmly. "If Lin Xian can persuade Auntie Wei, I would like to go and take a look. Celestial King Ling Yu still has some influence on Lord Palace Master. Since young Master Ling is willing to go, then Lord Lin Xian will naturally ask Celestial King Ling Yu to go and put in a word for Lord Palace Master," Fu He said. Ling Han was surprised. A dignified Celestial King, and one that was in the 7th heaven, would actually make a special trip for a mere dividing soul like him? Come, Celestial King Ling Yu was also very concerned about his disciples' matters, and did not hesitate to go all out to create an opportunity for his disciple to kill him. However, if he could really leave the Four Seas Palace, Ling Han very much wanted to seize this opportunity. He had the Black Tower, and this should only be known by Shang Jiwei. Even Celestial King Ling Yu did not know about the heavenly venerable Fate-born. Things actually went smoothly. A mere 3 days later, Administrator Chen passed on a message for Shang Jiwei, telling him to decide whether he wanted to go to that mystery realm or not. If he wanted to go, there would be many dangers in the mystery realm, and he had to be careful. Chapter 2148. Who would have thought that this place is actually a lost ancient land? The Great Cloud Celestial King said the same thing as Ling Yu Celestial King. These 8 tribes' true spirit beasts should have gone extinct long ago. Who would have thought that we would encounter them here? He casually stretched out his hand, and as his source energy surged, a giant beast was instantly caught by an 8-colored hand. No matter how hard it struggled, it was in vain. When it was caught in front of the 2 celestial kings, it was so scared that it immediately clamped its tail between its legs. In front of such high-level celestial kings, no matter how wild and untamed it would instinctively feel reverence. Celestial kings represented heaven and earth. Indeed, this is the 8 tribes celestial pattern, and it has fused 8 Tao regulations of heaven and earth. Ling Yu Celestial King waved a hand, and an incredibly complicated seal immediately appeared on the giant beast's body. In the past, although the 8 tribes' true spirit source beast did not advance to 9th heaven, with its 8 tribes celestial pattern, it practically swept through all 8th heaven. When Ling Han heard this, he sensed it again, and couldn't help but nod internally. He now had 8 source powers of heaven and earth, and it could be said that these 8 regulations were the mother regulations closest to the source. He was also the most sensitive to these 8 regulations, and he could sense that there were 5 regulations on the seal that could resonate with him. The 8 tribes' true spirit beast grasped 8 regulations the moment it advanced to the severing mundane tier, so its battle prowess was definitely incredibly powerful, and it would not be a problem for it to crush those at the same cultivation level. At first, I was just extremely bored, and wanted to take a look on a whim. Who would have thought that I would actually discover a lost ancient land? The great cloud celestial king casually tossed the 8 tribes' true spirit beast, and this giant beast hurriedly broke into a run, almost peeing its pants in fear. I wonder what opportunities there will be, Ling Yu Celestial King said calmly, but there was a domineering air in his tone that rivaled the brilliance of heaven and earth. This was a kind of expression, and also a kind of confidence. Even if the other was an 8th heaven celestial king, he would not give way, and would not be afraid. Let the juniors explore by themselves, and let us take a look around first, the great cloud celestial king said with a smile. Sure. Ling Yu Immortal King instantly agreed. With him and the great cloud immortal king here, how could that Ling Han die? The great cloud celestial king waved his hand, and the 5 juniors beside him were sent into the mystery realm. Ling Yu Celestial King also waved his hand, and Ling Han and the others were sent into the mystery realm. They were practically next to Yulan, Fenghua, and the others. The 2 immortal kings laughed and swaggered off. Their target was a mountain peak in the distance that pierced through the clouds. Divine multicolored light filled the sky, and there was even a type of desolate aura. Ling Han understood in his heart that Ling Yu Celestial King had followed them all the way not only to ensure their safety, but also to keep an eye on them. It was naturally for Hunyou's sake. How could Shang Jiwei release the tiger back to the mountain? Now that immortal King Ling Yue had left, and Ran and Lin Xian should have taken over this mission, right? In fact, Ling Yu Celestial King even had a wisp of his consciousness following him. The moment Hunyou appeared, this wisp of consciousness would immediately take form and capture Hunyou. A wisp of a celestial king's consciousness could crush an ascending origin tier cultivator. This was something that was undoubtedly true. He couldn't let Hunyou out now, so he had to find a chance to slip away. Ling Han had no intention of returning to the 4 Seas city. Saintus and Ran, brother Lin Xian. Yulan Fenghua and the others all greeted and Ran and Lin Xian. Previously, with the Celestial King present, they all appeared slightly restrained. Among these 5 people, aside from Yulan Fenghua who was still a heavenly soul, the other 4 had already advanced into the Immortal Palace tier. They were the other holy sons and saintesses of the void-resisting sect. However, 4 of the 5 were men, and only 1 was a woman. Lin Xian and Enran obviously knew them, and they also greeted them. The man called Ai Kaifeng looked at Ling Han and said, "This is..." A pensive expression spread across his face. Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly. Ai Kaifeng smiled reservedly, but a hint of disdain appeared at the corners of his lips. He was a secret emperor, while the other was a heavenly soul. The difference in strength between the 2 of them was like the distance between heaven and earth, so he naturally disdained to speak to Ling Han. This would lower his status. Not only him, but the other 3 were also like this. They were called Lao Liang, Bi Ziwen, and Di Tongxin, but they spoke warmly with Lin Xian and Enran, and did not spare Ling Han a second glance. In reality, being able to ask for Ling Han's name was already very commendable to him. Enran and Lin Xian had no intention of correcting Ling Han's name. The 8 of them started walking in the forest. They were not celestial kings, so how could they dare to act recklessly in this ancient land? They flew fearlessly in the air. This dense forest was very dark, and the trees were several thousand meters tall. Their leaves were large, dense, and thick, blocking all light. Thankfully, they were at least in the dividing soul tier, so there was naturally no problem. B. Ziwen suddenly exclaimed, and stopped in his tracks. "What's wrong?" Lao Liang asked. B. Ziwen raised his foot, and saw that there was actually blood flowing out. The others were all shocked. Though they had not encountered any enemies, coming to this kind of place, who would dare to be careless? They would definitely cover their bodies with origin power, but B. Ziwen was bleeding for some reason, causing them to be both confused and shocked. "What's going on?" B. Ziwen took off his shoes and socks, and they saw that there was actually an insect sting in the palm of his left foot, exuding a faint blue light. It was only an insect sting, and it had not been activated. Yet, when B. Ziwen stepped on it, it actually pierced through his shoes and socks, broke through his origin power and regulations defenses, and pierced into the sole of his foot. B. Ziwen's body suddenly started to tremble as if he was suffering from epilepsy. His eyes were rolling upward, and white foam was pouring out of the corners of his mouth. "Not good, this insect sting is poisoned." What kind of people were they? And they immediately guessed the reason. This was too terrifying, wasn't it? A mighty immortal palace tier elite was actually unable to block a broken insect sting, and when the deadly poison entered his body, even a monarch tier like B. Ziwen was unable to resist it. Lao Liang and the others hurriedly took out detoxification spirit pills, and fed them to B. Ziwen. Not long after, B. Ziwen finally calmed down, and also fainted, breathing heavily. In any case, he had suppressed the poison. As expected of the lost ancient lands, danger at every step. AI Kaifeng felt a lingering fear. He, Lao Liang, and Di Tongxin, like B. Ziwen, were all secret emperors. Since B. Ziwen had been poisoned, then they definitely would not have been spared. It was just that their luck was better, and they had not stepped on that insect sting. But who knew if there were other insect stingers here, or something similar? Meanwhile, Ling Han looked at B. Ziwen and said, "There is something wrong with his condition. The poison doesn't seem to have been neutralized." "What do you know?" AI Kaifeng immediately retorted. He had just opened his mouth, and Ling Han said such a thing. Wasn't he deliberately undermining him? The Tai detoxification pill that senior brother B took was personally refined by 4-star Grandmaster Zhong Qi, and can easily neutralize the poison of anyone below Celestial King tier. Lao Liang and Di Tongxin nodded in agreement. They naturally had complete confidence and trust in Grandmaster Zhong Qi. Ling Han pursed his lips and did not say anything more. He was also a 4-star Grandmaster, but since these three people did not appreciate his kindness, there was no need for him to stick his warm face to their cold buttocks. In any case, he was not familiar with B. Ziwen, and did not have any friendship with him either. What did his life or death have to do with him? B. Ziwen suddenly opened his mouth, and released a strange sound. It was as if he had squeezed out from a dead tree. When everyone's gazes were drawn over, they saw that B. Ziwen had suddenly opened his eyes. The white of his eyes had become a sheet of blue, and his pupils had become a ghastly white. It was extremely terrifying. Chapter 2149. The poison really hasn't been dispelled. Lin Xian laughed deliberately. Ling Han is right. Hearing his words, AI Kaifeng and the others naturally had a lot of opinions about him, but the one who hated Ling Han the most was Ling Han, who asked him to have indeed said such words. Naturally, the four of them thought that he was the main culprit. Ling Han glanced at Lin Xian. This person was really vicious, deliberately drawing hatred to him. Erg! B. Ziwen's cries grew louder and louder, and he suddenly shot to his feet. His posture was very strange. His legs were not bent, and they were just like wooden sticks. His ghastly white eyes exuded a terrifying aura. He stared at Lao Liang and suddenly pounced, opening his mouth to bite at his throat. "Junior brother B, have you gone mad?" Lao Liang hurriedly retreated. B. Ziwen, however, really seemed to have gone mad, his mouth emitting indistinct gurgling sounds as he continued to stare at Lao Liang and bite. Senior Brother B's poison has not been dispelled, so persuading him is useless. We have to take him down. AI Kaifeng called out, taking the lead to attack. Lao Liang and Di Tongxin also hurriedly attacked, suppressing Bi Ziwen together. Yulan Fenghua could only watch from the side. Although he was known as the strongest holy son in the history of the Void Resisting School, he was limited by his cultivation level and could only watch from the sidelines. The three of them attacked, suppressing Bi Ziwen. But their cultivation level and strength were similar to Bi Ziwen's, so it was easier said than done to take him down. The current Bi Ziwen had no consciousness at all, and only knew how to open his mouth to bite. He did not recognize anyone, and he had no scruples. But AI Kaifeng and the other two did not dare to be too heavy-handed. This way, even if they had the advantage in numbers, it would be negated. Brother Lin Xian, Holy Maiden and Ran, please help us, Di Tongxin pleaded. Lin Xian looked at Enran, and Enran nodded. The two of them immediately attacked, joining the fray. They had less scruples when they attacked. So what if they heavily injured Bi Ziwen? They could just slowly nurse him back to health. It was not convenient for AI Kaifeng and the others to attack, so they did not stop AI Ran and Enran. On the contrary, they were in charge of suppressing Bi Ziwen's attacks, so that Enran and Enran could fight to their heart's content. Ling Han was bored, and crossed his arms in amusement. I really didn't expect Brother Ling to be from the Four Seas Palace. Yulan Fenghua walked over and shook her head. She had a look of reproach on her face. Brother Ling, you're being disloyal. You even hid this from me. Ling Han chuckled. It's a long story, a long story. In short, I didn't intentionally deceive Brother Yulan. Yulan Fenghua also smiled, his eyes flickering. He was weighing the pros and cons. If he killed Ling Han, it would bring him a lot of trouble. After thinking for a while, he suddenly had an idea. There was no need for him to do it himself, he could just let the other four senior brothers and sisters do it. He believed that AI Kaifeng and the others already had a lot of opinions about Ling Han. Right, this was instigated by Lin Xian. Could it be that there was discord within the Four Seas Palace as well? This could be used. On the other side, the five monarchs finally suppressed Bi Ziwen. After all, Bi Ziwen did not have much intelligence and only knew how to fight with his life. His battle prowess would definitely be greatly reduced. The five monarchs each added a restriction on Bi Ziwen. This way, unless Bi Ziwen was stronger than the five of them combined, he would not be able to break through these restrictions. Every step is filled with thorns. They sighed. They had not even taken a few steps, and one of them had already fallen. Just how dangerous was this mystery realm? After putting Bi Ziwen into their spatial god tool, the seven of them continued forward. This time, they had learned their lesson. They leapt about a foot into the air. This way, they would not have to worry about insects piercing their soles. They did not walk very quickly. After a while, they suddenly saw 9 collapsed bodies. They're all dead. They've been eroded for at least a few billion years. That's not right. Wasn't this mystery realm just recently discovered? And it's a lost land from the primordial era. How could there be a corpse that's only a few billion years old? They looked at each other and felt that it was indescribably strange. Could it be that someone entered this place billions of years ago? That's right. The mystery realm does not necessarily have to be completely opened before people can enter. This place has always been here, so someone must have accidentally entered this place. It's just that no one left alive, which is why this place has never been discovered. This made sense. The 7 of them nodded. This should be the most logical explanation. The corpses have not been touched. The situation should be that the 9 of them fought amongst themselves and killed each other. They continued to make their conjectures. It's also possible that they belong to 2 different sides and just happened to meet here. After that, a battle broke out. That's also possible. There was naturally nothing good about corpses. The 7 of them quickly continued forward. However, they had only taken a few steps when Lao Liang suddenly cried out in alarm and turned to leave. What's wrong? The others hurriedly followed him. Before long, Lao Liang had already returned to the place where the 9 corpses had been. He began to flip over one of the corpses. He found a jade pendant on the corpse. After carefully examining it, he revealed a shocked expression. "Senior brother Lao, what's going on?" Ai Kaifeng asked. Lao Liang did not speak at first. After a while, he said, "I recognize this person. His name is Yu Kaicheng." He even waved the jade pendant. "This was given to him by me." "What?" The moment these words left their mouths, everyone was indescribably shocked and felt an intense chill. One had to know that Lao Liang's flame of life had only been burning for 700 to 800 million years, but these corpses had at least a few billion years of history. Then how did Lao Liang know this Yu Kaicheng? Had he encountered a ghost? "Senior brother Lao, are you sure this person is really Yu Kaicheng?" Di Tongxin asked. "Perhaps Yu Kaicheng came here too and somehow left the jade pendant on this corpse?" "That's right. The weathering is too strong. It's impossible to distinguish his appearance." Lao Liang shook his head. The jade pendant did not fall on this corpse. It was worn on the corpse. Therefore, this person must be Yu Kaicheng. Could it be that you mistook the jade pendant for someone else? This was the suspicion in everyone's hearts, but no one said it out loud. Since Lao Liang was already so certain, mentioning such a thing would be equivalent to slapping him in the face. Ling Han took 2 steps forward and carefully examined the 9 corpses. Previously, they had only been searching through the spatial artifacts of these 9 people to see if there were any treasures inside. But this time, Ling Han's focus was on their wounds. Insect sting. Ling Han found a wound on the sole of one of the corpse's feet. A bright blue insect sting was stuck in there. Everyone gasped in surprise. Insect sting again. Could it be that this person's mind was disturbed by the poison, and then he killed all 8 of his companions before finally dying from the poison? Lao Liang continued, "More than 200 years ago, I even met Yu Kaicheng once." Everyone was even more astonished at these words. Could it be that Yu Kaicheng also just entered this place and died not long ago? The environment here is special, causing corpses that have clearly only been dead for a few years, or even a few days, to be weathered so badly. Ugh! Just at this moment, a corpse suddenly let out a strange sound, exactly the same as Biziwen's. Chapter 2150. What the hell? Everyone was on high alert. They took a few steps back and looked at the corpse whose soul had been cut open. It was this corpse that had let out the strange cry. Tang! This corpse suddenly stood up, its knees not bending. It was incomparably strange. Without saying a word, the corpse bit at Yulan Fenghua. Just as Yulan Fenghua was about to attack, her face paled and she hurriedly retreated. Her opponent was far more powerful than her. "Mph!" Ai Kaifeng sneered and raised his hand to block. Bam! His attack was too terrifying, and the corpse was instantly sent flying. Pung, pung, pung! It crashed through at least a few hundred trees before stopping. However, it was not injured at all, and immediately shot back like a sharp arrow. This time, it was Ai Kaifeng who revealed a surprised expression. This corpse should have been a mythic king when it was alive. Now that it was dead, its combat strength was even weaker. He was a secret emperor, so he should have been able to smash that corpse into pieces with a single move. But that was not the case. This corpse was sent flying by him. It wasn't a match for him at all, but its physique was shockingly strong. It actually didn't break. Strange, very strange. Everything here was strange. They had clearly died for at most 200 years, but their corpses seemed to have been eroded for billions of years. Now that they had died, their physiques were off the charts. This was indescribably strange. The corpse arrived, its hands spread open, its 10 sharp fingers grabbing towards Ai Kaifeng instead. "Ridiculous," sneered Ai Kaifeng. His power was many times greater than his opponent's, but he had actually dared to attack him. Peng, peng, peng. Ai Kaifeng attacked with all his might, and with every strike, the corpse would be sent flying and bounced up, completely treating it like a sandbag. However, what was terrifying was that no matter how Ai Kaifeng attacked, this corpse did not break. It was as if it had been refined into immortal gold. Ling Han and the others were slightly surprised. Could it be that this person specialized in physique when he was alive? Otherwise, he wouldn't have turned into a corpse so quickly even though he had only been dead for 200 years at most. However, this was not necessarily the case, as this corpse seemed to have been weathered for hundreds of billions of years, so it was reasonable for some strange changes to occur. It should be related to the poison, Ling Han deduced. This poison could cause a person to lose their rationality and go on a killing spree. Perhaps after death, it would also greatly affect the corpse, making it indestructible. Can we take him down and study him carefully? Lin Xian said. Although they had captured another poison person, it was clear that Bi Ziwen could not dismember him to study, so they could only use this corpse as a test subject. That's easy, AI Kaifeng said proudly. The difference in power between the two of them was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. It was one thing for him to be unable to kill his opponent, but taking him down was extremely easy. His hands moved about, streaks of light flowing out from the gaps between his fingers. Immortal energy pervaded the air, carrying an indescribably great might. This was because he had used an immortal art. His battle prowess was instantly different. He forcefully suppressed it, and soon, the corpse was suppressed to the ground. It could only struggle with its hands, but was unable to stand up. Di Tongxin suddenly covered her head with her hands and tears of blood flowed from her eyes. What's going on? Everyone asked in shock. I sent my divine consciousness into this corpse, but I didn't expect that there was an indescribable dark and evil force that directly obliterated my divine consciousness. Di Tongxin's pretty face was pale, and she looked delicate and pitiful. So powerful? Everyone was shocked. This corpse's battle prowess was not strong, or it would not have been so easily suppressed by AI Kaifeng. But it had actually obliterated Di Tongxin's divine consciousness. How could they believe that? But would Di Tongxin joke about such a thing? Strange, everyone said, and became even more cautious. They did not dare to send their divine consciousness into the corpse again, lest they met the same fate as Di Tongxin. Emperors like them were destined to break through to the highest realm of the immortal Tao, so their divine consciousness had to be perfect and flawless. Even the loss of a single strand would have a huge impact on their Tao in the future. They wanted to cut open the corpse, but the previous battle had proved that this corpse's physique was incomparably tough. It was impervious to gravity and unbreakable to laws. It was almost like an immortal weapon, so how could they deal with it? But this corpse must be hiding a huge secret. If they could uncover the secret that could make one's physique as tough as immortal gold, just how high would their battle prowess rise? Thinking of this, everyone's breathing became a little rough. Only Ling Han did not care. He had cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his physique was so tough that even a reincarnated ninth heaven celestial king like Ji Wuming would have to concede defeat. So, he naturally would not covet this kind of thing that was neither human nor ghost. What he was curious about was whether this corpse was truly dead or not. Ling Han drew out his divine demon sword, and imbued it with regulations of slaughter and metal. Then he began to cut open the corpse. Sparks exploded from the corpse, and there was also a sharp grinding sound that made one's teeth feel uncomfortable. Everyone frowned. What are you doing? AI Kaifeng immediately chided. It was already very annoying, and you actually made such an annoying noise. Do you want to die? Ling Han only glanced at him, and did not say anything. He could not be bothered to deal with this kind of idiot. He was too full of himself, and he was completely self-centered. He thought that everyone should listen to him. Go and play with your eggs. Seeing that Ling Han actually ignored him, AI Kaifeng instantly flew into a rage. Upon entering the mystery realm, one of his companions had gone crazy, but was forcibly suppressed. Now, he encountered this kind of inexplicable and strange thing, causing him to become easily angered and irritable. Do you think I dare not touch you? AI Kaifeng said darkly. His strength completely crushed Ling Han, and in terms of background, the void-resisting sect was also a ninth heaven force, and the sealed emotion palace behind them was a heaven-venerable tier that surpassed celestial king tier. Thus, as long as he was in the right, he could be unbridled. Hee. Ling Han only smiled. He used his slaughter source power, and the four-leaf clover fluttered lightly. It was obviously so weak that it seemed like a gust of wind could knock it down, but it could explode with destructive power that could split the heavens. He once again slashed at that corpse. He believed that this should have a miraculous effect, because his own physique was like this. Direct attacks were completely ineffective, and he could only use the power of regulations to slowly wear it down. "You're courting death!" AI Kaifeng roared in fury. Not only did this brat ignore him, but he actually dared to go against his will, and even wanted to mess around with that corpse. Wasn't this deliberately going against him? Even if he didn't kill Ling Han, he would still teach this fellow a fierce lesson. Hong, he brazenly attacked, raising his fist like a flame god displaying his might. Flames surged into the sky. Though Ran was extremely displeased, since she had promised her master that she would take care of Ling Han, she could only suppress her displeasure at this time. Her figure leaped up, blocking in front of Ling Han, and then she stretched out a hand to block. Peng energy surged wildly, and the regulations of the Great Tao collided, exploding into flames that soared into the sky. And Ran didn't move at all, but AI Kaifeng was forced back 7 steps, and a stream of blood flowed from the center of his palm. "Holy Maiden and Ran, what is the meaning of this?" AI Kaifeng asked in displeasure, and there was even a trace of wariness. Though he was a monarch tier, and Ran was a monarch among monarchs, and had the strength to suppress him. Chapter 2152. Lao Liang and the others naturally wouldn't sit back and watch, and each struck out a palm to help Yulan Fenghua resolve the crisis. Hong, the swarm of insects instantly died in large numbers. When they entered a human's body, they could make a corpse incredibly tough, but they themselves were very fragile and had no ability to resist at all under the attack of a secret monarch. Xiao, a fist-sized bloodworm, suddenly charged out from the swarm of insects. There was an incredibly long and sharp mouthpart in its mouth, and it quickly pounced towards Yulan Fenghua. "Mother insect!" "Insect Queen!" Everyone called out one after another. Though they called it by different names, what was certain was that this insect should be in existence similar to the queen bee, and was the leader of the entire swarm. Puan Ran moved, and with a flick of her slender finger, a sword-like ice spike nailed that mother insect to the tree trunk. The mother insect's tail twitched a few times, and very soon stopped moving, finally dying. With its death, the swarm of insects that were still flying in the sky immediately fell together, dying on the ground. The mother insect not only led the entire swarm, but was also the source of life. Once it died, everything was over. Finally done. How troublesome! If they wanted to exterminate these insects, they had to first kill the host they were residing in, then refine them with the power of regulation, forcing the swarm of insects to appear, and then eliminate the mother insect. Only then could they be completely exterminated. They all thought that if the victim was a 4th or 5th secret elite, or even an ascending origin tier, then they could only flee at the mere sight of it. But this kind of worry couldn't stop their determination to advance in the slightest. The more dangerous it was, the more likely it was that an astonishing treasure could be brewed. Meanwhile, Ling Han secretly took out that ancient map and began to study it. This was definitely not a simple drawing, but rather a treasured tool that had a considerable amount of effort poured into it. For example, when Ling Han was outside, the map would only show the terrain of the celestial realm. But after entering here, the map would automatically enlarge and show the current situation of the region that Ling Han was currently at. If one inserted their divine sense into it, a 3-dimensional map would appear in their mind, and every detail would be incomparably clear. Of course, no one knew how many years ago this ancient map was made. Perhaps this place had undergone great changes and was completely different from before. Ling Han, on the other hand, was inclined to believe that there were no changes, or that the changes were very small. This should be a place that was isolated from the rest of the world, and only the internal changes occurred, which should be limited. He looked at the map carefully. They were now in a dense forest, and if they kept going forward, there would be a huge mountain and a lake behind it. However, the map did not show what was behind the lake. Perhaps it would only appear after walking forward for a while. This was because the map was enlarged and had more details, but correspondingly, the macroscopic view would be smaller. There was an arrow on the map, indicating that Ling Han should continue forward. Because they knew how terrifying the insect stingers were, they became even more careful as they walked. They also encountered more dried corpses, some of which were attacked by the corpses too late. They could only waste a bit of time to refine the corpses, force the insects out, and kill them. Some discovered it early and dodged in time, thus avoiding a battle. Their luck was not bad, and they did not encounter victims of 4th secret, 5th secret, or even ascending origin tier. Otherwise, they could only retreat. In fact, Ling Han hoped that they encountered such beings. Then, he could take the chance to separate from Enran and the others, creating a chance for him to escape. A dozen or so days later, they finally exited the secret forest. A perilous peak that pierced the clouds appeared in front of them. There was divine light wrapped around it, like the finger of a celestial king, exuding endless pressure. There must be great treasures in this mountain, Ai Kaifeng said with certainty. We need to go up the mountain to investigate, Lin Xian agreed. Then let's go. Ling Han, however, stopped and did not move. He shook his head and said, I have no interest in going up the mountain. The ancient map kept guiding them forward, and the 2 great celestial kings, Ling Yu and De Yun, had also come here previously. Even if they did not go up to the treasures here, there were other ascending origin tier elites. Furthermore, there were not just these 2 celestial kings that had come here. If there really were some treasures on the mountain, how could he, a dividing soul tier, get a share? Boom! On the mountain peak, there would occasionally be a brilliant flash of light. That was at least a battle on the level of ascending origin tier, and it could be seen from the symbols of Great Tao. Brat, this is not asking for your opinion, Ai Kaifeng said darkly. He only felt that Ling Han was bickering with him again. I said there are treasures on the mountain, and I want to go up, yet you say you are not interested. What do you mean? Lin Xian was also displeased. Ling Han, what cultivation level are you? Since we have decided to go up the mountain, you have the right to say no. You're not afraid, are you? Ha, you don't even have the courage to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. Your achievements are also limited. If you have the ability, try beating an ascending origin tier to the ground, Ling Han retorted casually. Nonsense. Lin Xian humphed. Ling Han crossed his arms over his chest. I dare say that I can take 10 to 20 moves from an immortal palace tier, but do you dare to take 10 to 20 moves from an ascending origin tier? They were both a major tier above each other, so it was relatively fair. Lin Xian couldn't help but feel greatly embarrassed, and could not retort. Ling Han was a monster, and he was completely unharmed after blocking Enran's 2 attacks. But if it were him, any ascending origin tier could insta-kill him. How could he retort? Ai Kaifeng and the others were stunned. Ling Han could really block 10 to 20 moves from an immortal palace tier? Wasn't this a joke? Immortal palace tier crushed dividing soul tier. This was an iron law that everyone knew, and it was the truth of heaven and earth. I don't want to go up the mountain either, Enran said. You guys go up, Ling Han, and I will go ahead first. I'll accompany you, Lin Xian said hurriedly. How could he be willing to separate from Enran, and there was no way he would allow Enran to be alone with Ling Han. Then we'll part ways for now. Di Tongxin smiled faintly. Sister Enran, take care. Enran nodded. She was not good at making friends with others. Lin Xian, meanwhile, was good at socializing. After chatting for a while with the 4 members of the void-resisting sect, he waved goodbye to them, and set off with Enran. Ling Han sighed internally. There were still 2 followers following him. How could he shake them off? Let's go, Enran said coldly. She was already impatient from waiting. The 3 of them advanced, and directly circled around the tall mountain. A long and narrow lake appeared in front of them. Though it was narrow, that was relative to its length. In truth, the width of this lake reached several tens of thousands of meters, and from time to time, they could see large fish leaping out of the water, creating waves that were several hundred meters tall. But a male eagle swept past, and easily caught this large fish before flapping its wings and flying away. The weak were prey to the weak, and this was the law of the jungle. This place is even more dangerous, Enran said calmly, but there was a strong sense of caution in her tone. Ling Han nodded internally because that large fish was shockingly at the ascending origin tier. With a splash, the lake water split open, and a colossal creature climbed out of the lake and onto the shore. This was shaped like a crocodile, but it only had 3 legs, 1 in front and 2 at the back. Its tail was thick and strong, and it was covered with scales that were like black iron and as sharp as a saw. This was not the most terrifying thing. What was terrifying was the aura that this crocodile exuded. Secret 5, Lin Xian immediately said, his pupils contracting slightly. Chapter 2153. Lin Xian was an emperor and was invincible against those 2 small realms above him. Thus, not only could he suppress ordinary 3rd secret experts, he could even fight against ordinary 4th secret experts. At least, he could escape unscathed. However, against a 5th secret expert, he could only be defeated. Not only him, even Enran, who was a super emperor, could not possibly be a match for a 5th secret expert. Thus, when this huge creature appeared, Lin Xian and Enran's expressions changed. They could not fight, and if they fought head-on, they would definitely die. They could only escape. This 3-legged crocodile immediately charged over, opening its bloody mouth and biting towards Ling Han and the other 2. "Go!" Enran shouted. When she leaped up, she did not forget to grab towards Ling Han. She did not forget Shang Jiwei's instructions to protect Ling Han. Lin Xian saw this and instantly went crazy with jealousy. He naturally did not know Shang Jiwei's instructions and only thought that Enran was concerned about Ling Han. Naturally, he was filled with jealousy and wanted to tear Ling Han into pieces. Ling Han's physique was extremely strong, but in terms of combat ability, it was naturally not enough to fight against a secret emperor. Thus, he was directly grabbed by Enran and could not fight back. Xiao, Enran used her movement technique and was as fast as flowing light. Lin Xian followed closely behind. His eyes were fixed on Ling Han and he did not hide his killing intent at all. Ling Han saw this and felt slightly depressed. I don't want to be grabbed by a woman. Firstly, it will hurt my reputation. Secondly, how can I escape? If Lin Xian knew what he was thinking, he would definitely be even angrier. Isn't this taking advantage of me and still trying to act innocent? Enran and Lin Xian escaped while the 3-legged crocodile chased behind. Its 3 legs flipped but did not touch the ground at all. It was as if the sky was an ocean that it could roam freely. However, if the realm was the same, the speed of cultivators was actually about the same, unless the cultivator's rule was good at running. For example, lightning rule or space rule. Of course, not all lightning and space rule were good at speed. Unfortunately, this 3-legged crocodile was adept at thunder element rules, and it was inclined towards speed. As its 3 legs moved, lightning flashed behind it, allowing it to burst forth with astonishing speed. It had started late and there was a large distance between it and Ling Han and the other 2, but this chase had quickly shortened the distance between them. We can't shake it off, let's fight. Enran made a prompt decision. If they encountered another 5th secret demonic beast, or even an ascending origin tier demonic beast, only death would await them. All right. Lin Xian was also an emperor and naturally didn't lack battle intent. The 2 of them stood still, and Enran casually threw Ling Han to the side. Then, a mirror appeared in his hand, and its appearance was somewhat similar to the Great Sun King realm. This was an imitation, and it was of the Immortal Palace grade. Wang, the treasure mirror, emitted rays of light. Some of them shone on Enran's body, while others landed on the 3-legged crocodile's body. However, the effects were completely opposite. It increased Enran's combat power, but it severely weakened the 3-legged crocodile's combat power. This would have a miraculous effect even on a 5th secret master. Enran charged towards the 3-legged crocodile and exchanged a blow with this colossal creature. However, she immediately turned into a flash of light and was heavily sent flying. Even if her own combat power had increased and her opponent's had decreased, because there was a whole 4 minor levels between them, how could it be negated by a monarch tier and a precious tool? She was still no match for the crocodile. Lin Xian hurriedly went up to meet it. He drew out a spear, and as he waved it, it was as if an azure dragon had emerged from the sea, releasing waves of dragon roars. This was also a pseudo-celestial tool, and its might was monstrous. Unfortunately, that three-legged crocodile was too strong. With a mere flick of its tail, it sent Lin Xian flying. However, Ran had already charged back and restrained the three-legged crocodile, not giving it a chance to chase after Lin Xian. Just like that, the two of them took turns to restrain the three-legged crocodile. Although they were completely at a disadvantage, the three-legged crocodile had fought for a long time without any results, and would probably tactfully retreat on its own. After pondering for a while, Ling Han knew that Ran was safe. Moreover, Shang Jiwei was willing to let her come out, so she must have given her some kind of super treasure. However, the number of times she could use it was limited, or she would have to pay a huge price to use it. His feelings towards Shang Jiwei were very contradictory. On one hand, he was angry that she had killed Long Yueshi, but on the other hand, Shang Jiwei's concern for him was genuine, and he was somewhat touched. Therefore, he also showed concern for this disciple of Shang Jiwei. After confirming that she would not be in danger, he smiled and said, "I won't be of much help even if I stay, so I won't drag everyone down. I'll leave first." After saying that, he turned and ran. "Stop!" And Ran shouted angrily. Apart from promising to protect Ling Han, she also had another mission, and that was to not let Ling Han leave her sight. In his spatial divine tool, there was a person her master must kill. She didn't know why Shang Jiwei didn't use force with her astonishing strength, but since Shang Jiwei had said it, she must carry it out to the letter. When women did things, sometimes they really didn't care about the consequences. She suddenly turned and ran, chasing after Ling Han. Lin Xian was shocked. How could he block a fifth secret immortal beast by himself? Bang! Before he could finish his thought, he was swept by the three-legged crocodile's tail and was sent flying an unknown distance. Fortunately, the three-legged crocodile didn't chase after him. Instead, it fixed its eyes on Ling Han and ran. To be exact, it said that it wanted Ling Han, because it sensed that there was something it needed in Ling Han's body. Source energy of heaven and earth. And Ran's figure shot forward, and she quickly closed the distance between her and Ling Han. When he was about to reach the limit of Ran's attack, Ling Han immediately opened the void spirit space. The air distorted, and countless mirrors appeared. He seemed to be everywhere. If it was any other time, Ran could naturally destroy all the mirrors at will. Then Ling Han would have nowhere to hide, and he would be captured by her. However, there was a fifth secret immortal beast chasing after her, so how could she have the time to attack? She could only wait, but the three-legged crocodile quickly caught up. With a sweep of its tail, endless energy swept out, and those mirrors were instantly shattered. Where's Ling Han? And Ran couldn't help but frown. She had been waiting for Ling Han's true body to appear, but under the three-legged crocodile's sweep, all the mirror clones had been shattered, and Ling Han was still nowhere to be seen. How could a person disappear without a trace? She had never considered this possibility at all. Unless it was a spatial god tool forged from celestial metal by a celestial king, then it should be called a spatial celestial tool. Otherwise, no spatial god tool would be able to withstand such an attack. Because spatial god tools could only be forged from level 20 godly metal, and pseudo-divine metal was out of the question. Stacking godly metal would affect the spatial effect, so it couldn't be forged successfully. And using celestial metal to forge a spatial celestial tool was too extravagant. Even with the Four Seas Palace's resources, they didn't have such extravagance. A large number of celestial kings were waiting for celestial metal to forge a celestial tool. Then where was Ling Han? Even if he had been killed by a single attack from the three-legged crocodile, there should still be some remnants of his divine sense. What a freak! Who, after a momentary daze, the three-legged crocodile once again launched a fierce attack at her. Chapter 2154. With a powerful enemy attacking, Ran naturally didn't have the leisure to search for Ling Han's whereabouts, or think about where he had gone. She retreated as she fought, fleeing far away. Phew, I've finally shaken him off. Ling Han came out of the Black Tower, and breathed a long sigh of relief. Now he was free to fly. He immediately frowned, feeling a familiar aura rapidly approaching. Ling Han! Lin Xian roared angrily, charging over from afar, stabbing at the air with his spear. Instantly, spear force took form, piercing towards Ling Han like a sharp arrow. As the spear swept past, the ground around it started to crack. It was an extremely terrifying sight. It was still because the environment here was unusually stable, or else a secret emperor would have long since revealed a deep and wide crater here. Ling Han thought for a moment, but didn't enter the Black Tower, instead turning to flee. Entering the Black Tower whenever he encountered trouble was not acceptable. Can you escape? Lin Xian smirked coldly and pursued closely. Ling Han laughed, drew out the divine demon sword, and turned to deliver a slash. Shua, sword chi shook the skies. Even though Lin Xian was a mystic the arch, he did not dare to let this sword attack hit him. However, his strength was too strong. With just a punch from his fist, the sword chi was shattered, and his speed only slowed down slightly. How great was the difference in speed between a dividing soul and an immortal palace tier. Lin Xian quickly closed the distance between the two of them. He held the spear in his right hand, while his left hand was freed, and blasted at Ling Han. At this moment he was extremely jealous, and there was no one around. Even if he killed Ling Han, no one would know, and he could easily blame it on those ferocious beasts. What did it have to do with him? A vicious glint flashed across Ling Han's eyes. He actually moved in the opposite direction, and directly faced Lin Xian's attack. Pung, the fist force landed. This was something that could break 4-star pseudo-divine metal, but when it landed on Ling Han's body, it didn't cause any damage and merely caused Ling Han to retreat. The void spirit space was unfolded, and Ling Han immediately appeared behind Lin Xian, also punching out. Ah, I've seen this move before. Do you think I won't be on guard? Lin Xian laughed coldly. He stabbed back with his spear. It was quick, accurate, vicious, showing off his emperor's strength. Ling Han was neither angry nor shocked. He was brewing a superstorm. Origin collision, the collision of the 5 world origins, the power of which was enough to explode the void. Lin Xian immediately turned pale with fright. The terror of this attack was completely beyond his imagination. He admitted that Ling Han was very powerful and could even withstand a few attacks from a mystic emperor, but he did not think that Ling Han's battle prowess could threaten him. However, he could sense that if he was struck by this attack, he would die without a doubt. But he underestimated the enemy. Yes, he knew that Ling Han's physique was astonishing, and he also knew that the latter had the ability to teleport instantly. Thus, this counterattack from Ling Han was completely within his expectations. But it was precisely because of this that he would be careless, because he did not take Ling Han's strength seriously at all. How could it be possible to dodge now? Boom, there was a great explosion in the space, and the surrounding area of 10 miles was completely razed to the ground. However, when the energy storm stopped, Lin Xian was still standing, and there was an indescribable symbol flashing on his body, exuding a supreme aura. The symbol that a celestial king had used had blocked that sure-kill attack. As expected, though Ling Yu's celestial king had left, how could he not be prepared? With the protection of a 7th heaven celestial king's regulations, even an ascending origin tier could not possibly kill Lin Xian. Of course, once the symbol of a celestial king was used, its power would begin to dissipate. Thus, it was a life-saving measure and could not be used rashly. Lin Xian looked at Ling Han in shock, his face filled with disbelief and disbelief. He, a monarch tier, a mighty immortal palace tier, had actually almost been killed by a mere heavenly soul tier, and it had been insta-killed. He had still overestimated himself. If it were not for Ling Yu's celestial king's support, how could he still be exclaiming in shock here at this moment? This person was too dangerous. Lin Xian's expression was filled with shock, and the killing intent in his heart had reached a peak. At this moment, no matter who appeared, they would not be able to stop him from killing Ling Han. If he did not kill this brat, he would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. Die! He charged out again, but since he knew that Ling Han possessed that terrifying ultimate move, he naturally was also prepared. If he repeated the same mistake, then he would not be able to call himself a monarch tier in vain. Sure enough, when Ling Han shot out another source collision, Lin Xian's figure leaped in time, far away from the attack range of this move. What? Do you not dare to take my attack? Ling Han broke into a grin. I have taken all your attacks, yet you do not dare to take my attack. What kind of immortal palace tier are you? Fuck, it's not that I'm weak, but that you are too freakish. Which dividing soul's attack could break through the defenses of an immortal palace and pose a threat? How many dividing soul's defenses could even withstand the attacks of an immortal palace? There was only Ling Han. How can there be such a freak in this world? However, he could not refute this. It was indeed his immortal palace that was hiding, not daring to take a direct attack from Ling Han. He was really depressed to death. Die, 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 die. Lin Xian had learned his lesson and no longer approached Ling Han, instead launching a long-range attack. He was a major tier higher than Ling Han, so even if he attacked from such a distance, he could still pose a huge threat to Ling Han. On the other hand, Ling Han's source collision was limited by the distance and could no longer pose a threat to Lin Xian. In this way, Ling Han was instantly surrounded by danger. Ling Han did not continue fighting. The source collision could only catch his opponent off guard. If he could not finish off his opponent in a single strike, then there would not be another chance. If he still had a source power of heaven and earth, then he might as well enter the Black Tower and directly cultivate to the level of 9 dividing soul tier before coming out. At that time, he would be equivalent to a secret of an immortal palace, and he would be able to suppress Lin Xian as easily as cutting grass. Want to run? No way. Lin Xian pursued. He would definitely not let the tiger return to the mountain. Ling Han, today, had to die. Ling Han ignored him and only used his movement technique, his figure as quick as lightning. Lin Xian used all his techniques, but Ling Han also had many life-saving techniques. The void spirit space allowed him to create thousands of images, the indestructible heaven scroll allowed him to withstand attacks that surpassed his limit, and even the circulation of indestructible true fluid could instantly revive him from a state of near death. One chased, and the other fled. 7 days passed, and Lin Xian couldn't help but be shocked. After such a long time, he actually still could not take down a mere heaven soul tier. His killing intent became even stronger, but he was also filled with curiosity about Ling Han. This person definitely had a great secret, or how could he be so freakish? Kill this guy, and snatch his fated opportunity. Thus, he also steeled his heart, and completely threw the possibility that there might be treasures in this mystery realm to the back of his mind. He was focused on chasing after Ling Han. He believed that if he captured Ling Han, his gains would surpass everything else. Another half a month later, Lin Xian suddenly felt a strange chill. There was a blood-red fog drifting in front of him, causing him to feel an endless chill, and involuntarily stop in his tracks. If he chased after Ling Han, he would definitely die. This was his intuition. Chapter 2156. No one knew how long the celestial realm had existed for. Perhaps the 3 celestial venerables knew, but who dared to ask them? After such a long period of time, was it strange for as many as 5 or even 6 celestial venerables to appear? That's not right. Ling Han immediately said, I remember you saying that the most terrifying battle of the Otherworld's invasion only erupted 8 eras ago, but this is clearly a mystery realm that has existed since ancient times. The time doesn't match. Unless, Small Tower immediately said, the Otherworld had invaded the celestial realm a long time ago. Ling Han nodded. Why have all the celestial venerables fallen, but no news of this battle has ever been heard? It's normal for there to be gaps in history. If the battle back then was too tragic and all the cultivators died, then naturally nothing would be left. Many years later, martial art was revitalized, and a new era was born, Small Tower said. In other words, more than 10 eras ago, there had been otherworld cultivators who had invaded, and the celestial realm had successfully stopped them. Of course, they had paid a huge price, but the connection between the 2 realms had also been blocked. So, after a few more eras, this connection was opened again, and there was a new wave of invasions. At that time, the Otherworld was the invader, but if the celestial realm had to pay the price of the destruction of the entire martial art to eliminate the invaders, then the difference in strength between the 2 sides was very large. It should be known that when fighting in the celestial realm, the otherworld cultivators would be rejected by this world, unable to use the rules of heaven and earth here. Yet, they could still fight until the celestial realm cultivators were completely annihilated, so the difference in strength was obvious. Perhaps, the last time the otherworld cultivators failed, it was because they underestimated the celestial realm's strength, thinking that only a few eras had passed, and the celestial realm's martial art was far from recovering, so they were careless. But this time, the otherworld will probably send out even more powerful forces, and the celestial venerables of the celestial realm are one less than before. Then, when the next great battle erupts, will the celestial realm still be able to stop it? Ling Han and Small Tower didn't say anything else, only feeling as if there was a heavy stone weighing down on their hearts. There's no point in thinking about this. I can only work hard to strengthen myself. Ling Han immediately regained his confidence. He wanted to become an Empyrean as soon as possible. Perhaps even if he became an Empyrean, Immortal Domain's strength would still be weaker than the other sides, but at least they had the qualifications to participate in the battle, able to control their own destiny. However, I still don't understand. Why did this ancient map, or rather, why did the skin of a celestial venerable lead me here? Ling Han rubbed his chin. Was it for this furry, terrifying insect leg? I understand, Small Tower said. There is the last source power of heaven and earth here that you need, Small Tower said slowly. What? Ling Han was pleasantly surprised. It is not an ordinary source power of heaven and earth, but rather the most mysterious source power of time, Small Tower said. Oh. Ling Han nodded and didn't think much of it. Small Pagoda swayed left and right, indicating that it shook its head. Idiot. Everything is the same in the Immortal King realm. Moreover, the quintessence of heaven and earth are all 9 Daos. What's the difference? Ling Han gave his reason. You're ridiculously wrong. Small Tower shook its head. Time is the most important rule in the world, but at the same time, it is also incomparably simple. Past, present, and future, there are only 3 variations. Thus, there is only one source power of time. 1. Ling Han's expression became solemn. The other quintessences all have 9 Daos, but there is only one regulation of time, which is equivalent to 9 Daos merging into one. Do you still think it's the same? Small Tower countered. Ling Han nodded. The source power of time should be the most precious of the quintessences. In reality, the regulation of time was also the most terrifying of the quintessences. Even at the Celestial King realm, even if it couldn't suppress the other quintessences, it was still incomparably powerful. I originally thought that even if you could obtain the 9th source power of heaven and earth, it would only be of the poison attribute. I never would have thought that this unique source power of time would actually appear here. Small Tower also seemed very shocked. In other words, back then, even the original born Heavenly Lord was not able to obtain the regulation of time? Ling Han asked. Nonsense. Small Tower had never given Ling Han any face. Ling Han was unconcerned. He naturally knew that this was nonsense, but being able to surpass the original born Heavenly Lord in a certain aspect made him feel very good. Otherwise, he would always feel that he was walking on the other's path, taking one step at a time without any change. He didn't want this. He wanted to walk his own path. Where is the source power of time? Ling Han asked, appearing to be slightly anxious. As long as he obtained the source power of time, he would immediately enter into seclusion in the Black Tower, directly form 9 divided souls, and then come out again. Then he would beat up that idiot Lin Xian. Since this map guided you here, then the answer naturally also lies with it, Small Tower said. This was practically shirking responsibility. Ling Han picked up the map and once again infused his divine sense into it, searching for a way to obtain the source power of time. Wang, the skin of the heavenly venerable tier shone brilliantly, and that seal released an even more brilliant light. A supreme aura instantly enveloped the whole mystery realm. So what if it was celestial kings in the 7th and 8th heaven? Their hearts trembled madly, as if they were facing a great enemy. However, This aura was controlled within the boundaries of the mystery realm. Otherwise, if it spread out, it would probably attract the attention of a few supreme beings. For example, Heavenly Venerable Feng Qing. Hong, that insect leg emitted a faint light and launched an attack on the skin of the Heavenly Venerable Tier. These two existences had been at the level of Heavenly Venerable Tier in the past, and by now, their original bodies had definitely long since transformed into Tao. However, even a bit of a claw left behind was incredibly terrifying. If it weren't for the protection of the skin of the Heavenly Venerable Tier, Ling Han would definitely have long since been turned into dust. However, Ling Han also had a Heavenly Venerable Tier treasure, and as long as he entered the Black Tower, he was sure that it should be no problem for him to match the remains of a Heavenly Venerable Tier. Ling Han discovered that the skin of the Heavenly Venerable Tier was actually eradicating the aura of the insect leg. No, eradicating was not too appropriate. The strength of the two was about the same, and neither could suppress the other. Thus, they were mutually canceling out. The seal on the skin of the Heavenly Venerable Tier became dimmer and dimmer, and the blood flowing from the insect leg also became dimmer and dimmer. Finally, when it reached a certain critical point, Hong, the skin of the Heavenly Venerable Tier in Ling Han's hand burst into flames, and was instantly burned into ashes, no longer existing in the mortal world. Meanwhile, the insect leg also stopped bleeding and rapidly withered, turning into ashes that melted into the water. Thankfully, there was still a flash of light on Ling Han's body. That was the blessing that the skin of the Heavenly Venerable Tier had bestowed on him before it disappeared, continuing to protect him from being invaded by the bloody mist. It was at this moment that Ling Han sensed a different aura. Source power of heaven and earth. Though every source power of heaven and earth was different, since they were all born from heaven and earth, and the embodiment of the great Tao, there would naturally be some essential similarities. Thus, he could immediately confirm that this was the aura of the source power of heaven and earth. It was suppressed under the insect leg. At that time, the Heavenly Venerable of the foreign territory should have died together with Xiaogu's previous life, but before it died, it had still used its remains to suppress the source power of time, and Xiaogu's previous life had also formed a piece of skin and refined it into a map, guiding those who came after it to come here and collect this source power of heaven and earth. Even the two great Heavenly Venerables had gone through so much trouble, and this was enough to show the importance of the source power of time. If it was obtained by the foreign territory, it would definitely be a huge blow to the celestial realm, and once Ling Han obtained it, he would obtain endless benefits. Chapter 2157. A Beautiful Romance. Ling Han directed his divine sense to attract the source power of time. He frowned slightly, because he discovered that this source power of heaven and earth had suffered serious damage, feeling a bit like it was dying. The foreign Heavenly Venerable's broken limb has been suppressing it all this time. The reason it hasn't been destroyed is because the source power of time is powerful. If it was any other source power, who knows how long ago it would have been destroyed, Small Tower said. Indeed, how many epochs had passed? However, the Heavenly Venerable was really powerful. A broken limb actually completely suppressed a source power of heaven and earth, and it was a source power of time formed from 9 Daos, even almost obliterating it. Although obliterating the source power of time here would only deal a blow to the heaven and earth, and couldn't expand the connection point between the two realms and stabilize the passage, the foreign Heavenly Venerable was going to die anyway, so doing it was better than not doing it. Right? The corpse that had just died seemed to have been weathered for hundreds of billions of years. Was it because of the source power of time? The broken limb suppressed the source power of time, and if the bug poison entered the body, it might also carry with it the regulations of time, making one die for hundreds of billions of years. Ling Han first tossed these curiosity to the side. Now, the important thing was naturally to collect the source power of time. Then, he would be able to obtain 9 source powers of heaven and earth, cultivating an astonishing 9 divided souls. Without 9 divided souls, it was impossible to become a Heavenly Venerable. Ling Han fully activated the source power of time. This was too important. Previously, he had obtained 6 source powers of heaven and earth in a row, and his hands were sore. He was already a bit numb, not feeling the slightest bit of excitement. But now he became excited and nervous, filled with apprehension. He definitely had to obtain it. He didn't know whether the source power of time was too heavily injured or disdainful of him, but it didn't have the slightest intention of paying attention to him. Even channeling the indestructible heaven scroll was useless. He was just about to walk closer and try again, but the heavenly venerable light that enveloped him moved, joining the ranks of persuasion. The source power of time was originally lazy, but suddenly became excited, dancing with joy as if it had met an old friend. Xiao, a streak of light shot out from underground, and then shot towards Ling Han. Ling Han looked carefully. That was a creature that couldn't be described with words. It was small and exquisite like a fist, its entire body transparent, swirling with the aura of time. It seemed to be in the present, yet also seemed to be in the future, yet also seemed to be in the past. Time is the greatest power. If the source of time itself isn't willing, not even the heavenly deity can collect it. It can only be erased, the little pagoda said slowly. While it was speaking, the little creature had already shot out. It disappeared from the top of Ling Han's head in a flash and entered his sea of consciousness. When Ling Han suddenly felt his entire body shake, and waves of indescribable power spread out in his body. He had arrived at the primordial times of the ancient times, and had also arrived at the ancient times when martial art was flourishing. Time had changed, but the only thing that had not changed was time itself. He had an indescribable feeling that as long as he could overcome this obstacle, he would attain enlightenment. Duo! Small Pagoda suddenly exclaimed lightly, immediately waking Ling Han up. Brat, if you continue like this, you will transform into Tao. Ling Han's body, his skin and flesh all transformed into symbols, as if he was about to transform into regulations. He couldn't help but shiver. That feeling just then was actually a test of the source of time. If he couldn't pass, he would assimilate with the regulations of heaven and earth. This was just a nice way of putting it, assimilate with regulations. With his current meager power, how could he possibly affect the heaven and earth? It was like a drop of water falling into the ocean. It could only be absorbed. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh inwardly at his luck. If it wasn't for the heavenly deity's light, he probably wouldn't have been able to collect this source of heaven and earth. It had experienced the ancient times, and it was extremely likely that it had existed since the beginning of the heaven and earth. It had never been destroyed, and was the most original generation. And if it wasn't for Small Pagoda's timely reminder, he might have once again transformed into Tao and perished. So dangerous. He had originally thought that the source of time, which had 9 Taos fused into one, would be incomparably difficult to collect, but firstly, he had the help of the heavenly deity's light, and secondly, this source of heaven and earth had been suppressed for over a dozen epochs, so it had suffered far too serious an injury. Thus, after it symbolically gave Ling Han a test, it directly entered his dantian and began to seize territory. Even if it had suffered serious injuries, the power of 9 Taos fused into one was still there. Even if the other 8 source powers joined forces, they would only barely be able to fight it to a draw. Thus, this guy occupied half of the space in his dantian, and all the other source powers were pushed to the side. Too domineering. Ling Han used his divine sense to observe carefully. The source of time had transformed into a small beast. It looked like a deer, a turtle, a tiger, and it was constantly changing. Moreover, it seemed to be in the present, in the future, and in the past at the same time. It was impossible to grasp. Small Pagoda couldn't help but sigh ruefully. The source of time is the most miraculous source of heaven and earth. Even if a heavenly deity wanted to obtain it, it would not be a simple matter. It could be in the present, in the past, and in the future. Even a heavenly deity could not possibly go against the flow of time, so there was naturally nothing that could be done about it. Ling Han speculated that this source power of heaven and earth had followed Xiao Gu's previous life, but in the battle with the foreign heavenly venerable, the 2 great heavenly venerables had perished together, while it had been suppressed by the foreign heavenly venerable's broken limb, and had almost been destroyed. Some truths could never be verified. It was fine as long as it made sense. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to argue about it. The most important thing was the result, and the result was that he had obtained the 9th source power of heaven and earth, and was complete. Alright, he would attempt to break through to the 9th dividing soul tier now. That Lin something Xian, just wait to be blasted into pieces. No, Small Pagoda immediately said. Why? Ling Han asked. Though the broken limb of a heavenly venerable has already been destroyed, the power of a heavenly venerable still exists. This blood mist can at least exist for a few more epochs, but the heavenly venerable light on your body can only last for a few days at most. If you start cultivating in seclusion now, then when you come out again, how are you going to charge out of the blood mist? Small Pagoda countered with a question. Alright. Unless you can cultivate to the 9th level of heaven, and then you will be able to resist this kind of blood mist, Small Pagoda continued. This was naturally impossible. Ling Han nodded. Then he would leave this place. As long as he left the range of the blood mist, he would immediately enter into the Black Tower, and attempt to break through to the 9th dividing soul tier. He did as he said. With a leap, he was already heading back the way he had come. Lin Xian sat in a cross-legged position, his eyes slightly closed, but his divine sense had enveloped the whole swamp. No matter which place Ling Han came out from, he would detect it at the first instant, and then carry out a sneak attack, swearing to kill this person who posed a greater threat than the heavens. Of course, he only enveloped his divine sense outside the blood mist. The blood mist was naturally something he did not dare to touch. Once touched, his divine sense would immediately be corroded. That thing was too frightening, and could even easily obliterate the celestial light of a 7th heaven. He discovered that the initially calm blood mist suddenly stirred, and then he saw a young man stride out. He was tall and slender, and there was an indescribable light flickering on his body, as if it could suppress the heavens. That was Ling Han. But that was not right. Why did he feel an urge to kneel in front of the other? That strong feeling of helplessness was even stronger than when he was in front of his own master. His master was a 7th heaven celestial king. Chapter 2158. Lin Xian roared, forcefully driving away the fear in his heart. Because now he was even more greedy. He wanted to obtain everything that Ling Han had, to take it for himself, to help him soar. In his opinion, the reason Enran was stronger than him was because she had a Celestial King 9th Heaven Master. If he could also have a Celestial King 9th Heaven level treasure, he would definitely not be weaker than Enran. Die! He roared, charging over. Ling Han didn't dodge. He even smiled at him, revealing a row of snow-white teeth. Lin Xian was so angry that he stabbed out with his spear. The azure dragon roared, erupting with boundless might. He stabbed out with his spear, wanting to slaughter Ling Han. The spear stabbed out, but Lin Xian revealed an extremely shocked expression. This spear was actually blocked by the layer of light around Ling Han's body, causing his hands to go numb. His entire body was trembling, as if every muscle in his body was about to fall off. Ling Han reached out, slapping towards his face. Lin Xian knew that Ling Han had a killing move like the Origin Collision, so how could he not be prepared? He immediately bounced off the ground and retreated. He dodged the palm, but his expression was extremely ugly. If Ling Han had used the Origin Collision, he wouldn't have taken it to heart. But he simply wanted to slap him. What kind of contempt was this? But what was going on with this light? It was like the heavenly Tao was pitying and protecting him, making him tremble as if going against Ling Han was going against the heavens. Cultivating in this world, how could he go against the heavens? This must be the treasure that Ling Han had obtained in the blood mist. It must be. He was even more jealous. This should be his, it should all be his. You dodged quite quickly, Ling Han said with a smile. Taking advantage of the fact that the heavenly venerate light had yet to disappear, his defenses were invincible, so he charged toward Lin Xian. He had no intention of harming him either. Lin Xian exploded in fury. As the saying went, don't hit the face when hitting someone, but Ling Han specifically stared at his face and made a move. What kind of humiliation was this? Most importantly, Ling Han was only a tiny dividing soul, and actually dared to slap him, a secret emperor, in the face. If he didn't kill Ling Han, would he still have the face to see others in the future? What are you so arrogant for? I just got a treasure by luck, he said unwillingly. So you can only be envious. Following behind me so eagerly, isn't it because you're envious of the treasures I have? Too bad, you won't have a share. I don't believe that you can keep on using this kind of treasure, Lin Xian said viciously. Though he couldn't do anything to Ling Han couldn't do anything to him either. After all, the gap between their cultivation levels was clear for all to see, and it wasn't that Ling Han would be able to obtain victory with a single move just because his defense was invincible. The two of them fought fiercely. In fact, this was just a farce. Ling Han wanted to slap Lin Xian in the face, but Lin Xian was dodging, not letting him slap him. If word of this were to spread, it would be a joke. A dividing soul battling an immortal palace realm elite, yet it was actually an immortal palace realm elite that was being beaten into a sorry state. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Halfway through the 4th day, the heavenly venerate light on Ling Han's body suddenly trembled and then disappeared. Time was up. Ling Han and Lin Xian both stared blankly for a moment before Lin Xian burst out laughing. As expected, you can't use that treasure anymore. Ling Han, hand over your life. He raised his spear and counterattacked. The anger that he had been holding back for the past 3 days could finally be released. Idiot, Ling Han said casually. His figure flashed, and he had already entered the Black Tower. It wasn't that he was avoiding the fight, but that he wanted to play with Lin Xian for a while. When he came out again, he would be serious and kill him. Lin Xian's spear thrust forward, but it suddenly stabbed empty air. Where was he? He was surprised. He had used some kind of secret technique, and directly escaped far away. No, he clearly didn't sense the fluctuations of regulations of space, so how could he have escaped? Or was it some kind of camouflage technique? But if it was a camouflage technique, why did his spear stab only hit empty air? A camouflage technique could only blind one's eyes and divine sense, and couldn't be used to avoid attacks. Spatial God Tool, impossible. Spatial God Tools couldn't even compare to a 1-star pseudo-celestial tool in terms of strength. If he struck, the shockwave would only need to brush past, and that Spatial God Tool would definitely explode. Ling Han would have nowhere to hide at all. But after eliminating all possibilities, the remaining possibility was actually 0. This caused him to be dumbfounded. He must have some kind of celestial king tier technique, Lin Xian deduced. If he could escape, he wouldn't have needed to walk out from the blood fog at all. Instead, he could have directly left. So, he should be hiding in some corner nearby. If I thought he had left, I would have fallen for his trap. So, I pretended to leave first, and then monitored him from afar. His cultivation level is inferior to mine, so there's no way he could have discovered that I was nearby. Additionally, he chose to escape instead of fighting me, which means that this celestial king tier technique can only be used to save his life. Otherwise, why would he need to escape? Lin Xian calmed his emotions, and linked up the events from beginning to end. He came up with a guess that he thought was the most realistic. He tapped his foot, and walked into the distance. It seemed like he had given up on leaving, but in truth, he was waiting on the sidelines. In the Black Tower, Ling Han didn't care what Lin Xian thought. He was now going to form 9 divided souls, and establish the foundation of a heavenly venerable. Let me tell you a piece of good news. Small tower appeared, and lightly shook its body. With the entry of the source of time, the Black Tower's time acceleration can be increased by another 100 times. In other words, 1 day can be equivalent to 100,000 days? Ling Han was overjoyed. That's right, and it's because the source of time was injured. When it completely recovers, this acceleration effect can still be increased. Small Tower gave Ling Han even greater hope. Ling Han was naturally overjoyed. What he lacked the most was time. With enough time, he could catch up to those prodigies who had become famous long ago, or even celestial kings who had achieved Tao a few epochs earlier. Now, a year had passed in the outside world, but Ling Han could cultivate for 100,000 years in the Black Tower. This was too awesome. He immediately sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Shang Jiwei regarded him as a nephew and gave him a large amount of cultivation resources. And she was qualified to know about the level of a heavenly venerable, so she naturally had an extremely high opinion of Ling Han and didn't think that the heavenly soul tier was Ling Han's limit in this major tier. Thus, she gave Ling Han cultivation resources that were far beyond normal. Clearly, she wanted to help him raise his level to 9 divided souls. Ling Han sighed softly. The more benefits he received from Shang Jiwei, the more difficult it would be for him in the future. But at this moment, he really couldn't refuse. Forget it, I'll cultivate first. He cultivated in the Black Tower, which was different from under the reincarnation tree. The acceleration of time could only affect his divine sense, but his whole body. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years. Ling Han's cultivation level began to soar. With the support of a large amount of resources, the accumulation of Ling Han's origin power was like an erupting volcano, and there were 9 source powers of heaven and earth in his body, so there was no problem for him to comprehend regulations. This was a precious treasure that even celestial kings would covet. Even an idiot would be able to soar his cultivation level if he obtained it, what more when it was in Ling Han's possession. After 9,000 years, Ling Han cultivated to the peak stage of the Heaven Soul tier, and began to break through. Since ancient times, only a few people had managed to reach the 5th divided soul. Ji Wuming severed his own cultivation level as a 9th Heaven Celestial King in order to break through to the Heavenly Venerable tier. He will definitely be able to form the 9th divided soul. I definitely can't fall behind him. Chapter 2160. How is this possible? How is this possible? Lin Xian's mind was filled with stars and he was about to be dumbfounded. Ling Han was definitely a divided soul. The aura he emitted was proof. If he couldn't even tell this, then Lin Xian wouldn't be a secret emperor. But how could a split soul be so strong? He was on par with a mystic, and not just any mystic, but a mystic emperor. In fact, he even had the upper hand. Lin Xian felt as if the sky was about to collapse, and the iron law of martial art had collapsed. Ling Han, on the other hand, frowned slightly. His physique hadn't increased along with his battle prowess, and it was only close to the level of 5-star pseudo-immortal metal. Thus, when he used brute force against a 5-star pseudo-immortal artifact, his skin broke. It was just a scratch on the skin, not a serious injury. Alright, he already had the upper hand in terms of battle prowess, and he had yet to use his true killer move. Essence collided. With a tap of his foot, he charged toward Lin Xian. Hong, he continued to accelerate, and suddenly surpassed his limit. This was the origin of time. He had accelerated the flow of time on himself. As fast as a beam of light, he instantly appeared in front of Lin Xian and punched again. A strong sense of danger assaulted him, causing Lin Xian to temporarily put down the shock in his heart. He raised his spear and counterattacked. Otherwise, he would be blasted apart. Bang bang bang, 2 monarchs clashed. One was a 1st esoteric, while the other was a 9th divided soul. Their realms were almost the same, so it would depend on who had cultivated their realms to a higher level. Obviously, this person was Ling Han. He was the hegemon of the empire, a unique existence in almost every era. It was just that in this era, there was an additional Ji Wuming. That was why there was someone who could be a match for Ling Han at the same cultivation level. Ji Wuming would probably feel this way too. He was also a unique emperor among emperors. Ling Han's punches rained down. His physical strength had skyrocketed to the origin realm, allowing him to swing his fists endlessly. His punches were far more frequent than a 1st secret realm expert should have been. Lin Xian retreated repeatedly, his expression changing from anger to shock, then from shock to fear. He realized that Ling Han really did have the ability to kill him. No, he can't die here. If he could defeat Ling Han, he would not tell anyone. He would kill Ling Han and plunder all his treasures. But if he couldn't do it, he could only give up on this tempting thought and ask his master to come. Mo Wuji believed that with the temptation of a 9th Heaven Immortal King's treasure, even Immortal King Lingyue would let go of his apprehensions towards Shang Jiwei and kill her to snatch the treasure. The only thing on his mind now was to kill Ling Han. He was incomparably decisive. With a single thought, he immediately raised his spear and attacked. He wanted to find a way out for himself. Ling Han sneered, opening his right hand and activating the power of time. Lin Xian's speed instantly slowed down. Roaring, Lin Xian slapped his chest, activating the blood essence in his heart to form a shield of light that negated the natural laws of time. However, he had only taken a few steps when he suddenly stopped in place in astonishment. He's just walking in place. Space law. He turned around and looked at Ling Han with a devilish gaze. How was this possible? He was just a heavenly soul, yet he had mastered the power of time and the rules of space. Was he going to let anyone live? Ling Han grinned. I'm really sorry, but I've mastered almost all the rules. With the corresponding source of heaven and earth, it was equivalent to him containing a Tao of heaven and earth in his body. This was naturally terrifying. Lin Xian took a deep breath. He had come to the realization that it was impossible for him to escape from Ling Han's hands. Then he could only fight. Ling Han, you forced me to do this, he said as he gripped his spear with both hands. Boom! A streak of black aura surged out of his body, and his aura immediately changed. He became extremely cold and evil. Ling Han's murderous aura immediately blazed. Damn it, you've actually cultivated the techniques of the other world. A arch like him should know that cultivating another system would cause harm to this world, but he had still learned it. Wrong, Lin Xian said proudly. An indescribable black shadow appeared in his eyes, emitting endless evilness. From the very beginning, I've been practicing the foreign realms techniques. Only then did I join the Four Seas Palace. Ling Han's fingers couldn't help but twitch. In that case, Lin Xian was actually an undercover agent of the Dark Powers. Since the Four Seas Palace had someone like Lin Xian, then what about the other powers? Unknowingly, the Dark Powers had already infiltrated the celestial region to such a degree. Not only were there people at the lower levels promoting faith in the celestial spirits, there were also existences like Lin Xian in the higher levels. In the future, it was extremely likely that he would become one of the higher levels. In the future, when the other world fully invaded again, these infiltrators would take the opportunity to bewitch people's hearts and drag them down. The celestial region was weak to begin with, so wouldn't they suffer a crushing defeat? After experiencing the previous setback, the other world also adjusted their strategy, no longer acting recklessly. You are someone from the celestial region, yet you do things that harm the entire celestial region. Your intentions are deserving of death. Ling Han said coldly, his killing intent boiling. Black aura continuously surged out of Lin Xian's body. This was another type of power that was incomparably powerful. But it was also because of this power that he was spurned by the world, no longer able to use the laws of heaven and earth. I am a true genius, and my power of darkness has been sealed since I was young. Oh, this is what you call it in this realm. While cultivating the techniques of the celestial realm, I did not forget to cultivate the power of darkness. If it were not for the seal, and I could not use the power that I should have, how could I lose to anyone? Hearing his clamor, Ling Han was shocked. Being able to become the disciple of Ling Yu Celestial King, Lin Xian had naturally undergone strict examination, but Ling Yu Celestial King actually did not find anything wrong with him. Who had laid down this seal? It was so powerful. However, who cared? He would beat him up. Ling Han drew out the divine demon sword and slashed out, slashing towards Lin Xian's neck. I who have activated the power of darkness, how could you be a match for me? Lin Xian laughed loudly. He directly swept out with his spear, using it like a staff. He abandoned the might of the pseudo-celestial tool and only used the innate dominance of the pseudo-divine metal. Because he was already unable to activate the pseudo-celestial tool, the martial art of the outer realm was naturally incompatible with this realm. But the might of this staff not only did not weaken his original battle prowess in the slightest, it had instead increased considerably. If Ran was here, she would definitely be shocked. His battle prowess was almost equal to hers. Pung, the sword and spear clashed, bursting into a series of dazzling sparks, and a shock wave also shot out. Ping, 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 a layer of the ground was forcibly shaved off. The smile on Lin Xian's face instantly disappeared, and he once again showed an expression of disbelief. That was because even though he had exploded with the power of darkness, he was actually still no match for Ling Han. How could this be? Shouldn't the power of darkness be of a higher level than the martial art of this realm? And his martial art level was even higher than Ling Han's, so why was he still no match for Ling Han? There was no reason at all. His expression was filled with confusion. The confidence that he had just built up collapsed again, and this time, it had completely collapsed from the inside out. Ignorant! Ling Han reprimanded softly. He waved the divine demon sword, and soared Qi sword into the sky. For people like Lin Xian, he did not need any pity. Kill! Chapter 2161. In Ling Han's hands, the origin of heaven and earth bloomed with mysterious power, suppressing Lin Xian. The space law allowed Ling Han to be everywhere, the time law allowed him to disrupt the past, present, and future to a certain extent, the thunder law was overbearing and fierce, the slaughter law was indestructible, and the five elements law rotated, seemingly able to create a new world. Lin Xian was really strong. He was an emperor, and after unlocking the seal, he was even stronger than an emperor like in Ran. Unfortunately, his opponent was an emperor among emperors that rarely appeared in several epics, a true emperor. This caused him to be suppressed. Soon, his entire body was covered in blood, and the strange thing was that after he released the power of darkness, his blood also turned pitch black. He struggled to hold on. He was filled with a thirst for life and did not want to die here. This really allowed him to erupt with powerful combat power. Furthermore, he had also activated a secret technique. No matter what kind of injury he suffered, the wound would quickly heal in a short period of time, as if it had not been affected at all. Ling Han did not believe that his recovery ability would always be this strong, but that he would have to pay a huge price in the future. But now, Lin Xian could continuously recover from his injuries. Although his physique wasn't invincible, with his recovery ability, he was close to invincible. You won't be able to kill me. I have the protection of immortal energy. Even the heavens wouldn't be able to kill me. Lin Xian laughed uproariously. His self-confidence was restored. So what if his combat prowess was inferior to Ling Han? He cultivated the power of darkness, and his level was higher than the immortal realms. His final achievements would definitely be higher than Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Ignorant." An indescribably terrifying power burst out from his body. He couldn't be bothered to fight with Lin Xian, so he used Origin Collision. A nervous expression instantly spread across Lin Xian's face. He had suffered from this move before, and if it weren't for the fact that Celestial King Ling Yu had used a celestial technique on him, he would have long since died. Perhaps he would have even created history by becoming the first immortal palace tier cultivator to die at the hands of a dividing soul tier in a head-on battle. But when he thought about his current recovery ability, the wound would probably heal as soon as it appeared. So what if the attack was even more powerful? Fearless, moreover, he couldn't run even if he wanted to. In front of Ling Han, who had grasped the origin energy of time and space, if he could escape, wouldn't that be an insult to these two origin energies? Hong, the great collision of the source sources erupted. The five elements regulations countered each other, forming an effect that far exceeded 1 + 1 = 2. Lin Xian also brandished his spear, thrusting it towards Ling Han, erupting with his strongest attack. However, his complexion immediately changed. His origin energy collided, and his body exploded without any suspense. His recovery ability was crushed by the berserk power, and he had no chance to recover at all. His body instantly turned into dust. "No!" He roared loudly, but his voice came to a screeching halt. In an instant, he turned into ashes. Energy surged violently. Ling Han stood still, and the 5 great Tao symbols on his body flickered before slowly dimming. Though he had completed the magnificent feat of surpassing his cultivation level to kill an enemy, Ling Han didn't look the slightest bit complacent. Firstly, Lin Xian wasn't his imaginary enemy in the first place, and secondly, he was worried about how many people like Lin Xian there were in the various forces, which made it impossible for him to be optimistic in the slightest. Ling Han, you're awesome. Hunyo ran over and pounced onto his back. Ling Han laughed loudly and patted the little girl's back. All his worries vanished like smoke in thin air. The little girl had this kind of charm and would only bring joy to others. Take this chance to quickly slip away, Ling Han said. Otherwise, when Celestial King Ling Yu was free, he would definitely come looking for him. Even if he was a rare 9 souls emperor tier since ancient times, what was he worth in front of a Celestial King? The 4 girls all nodded. They were naturally aware of the current situation. It was possible that there were still many secrets and many treasures hidden in this mystery realm, but Ling Han didn't have the slightest bit of greed. He had already obtained the source power of time, and this was his greatest gain. Aside from that, freedom was the most precious treasure. Ling Han channeled the source power of 5 elements of heaven and earth, which formed a perfect protection that concealed his aura, making it seem as if he had disappeared from this heaven and earth. He drew the 4 girls into the Black Tower again, and then strode away, retreating. A few days later he returned to the Great River area. Unfortunately, he encountered the attack of another ferocious beast. It was in the ascending origin tier, and he had no choice but to flee in a sorry state. He spent another 7 days before he arrived at the foot of the mountain. On the mountain peak, there was still a burst of celestial light, which was incredibly terrifying. Most likely, the Celestial Kings were still fighting over it, and perhaps they had really obtained some super treasure. Ling Han suppressed his greed. The chance of snatching food from the tiger's mouth from the hands of a Celestial King was infinitely close to 0. It was better for him to flee as soon as possible. Xiao, a figure, was currently running down the mountain, his speed extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye he arrived behind him. There was another person chasing after him, and his speed was even faster, the distance between them becoming shorter and shorter. A hint of surprise appeared on Ling Han's face. The person running in front had 2 eyes, 1 gold and 1 silver. Wasn't that Yi? Yi, the number 1 prodigy of the Eastern Celestial Realm's wide prosperity heaven, and he had also become friends with Ling Han through a battle. Because of battle, they had forged a friendship. Strange, why had he also come to the Western Celestial Realm? And the person chasing behind Yi was actually someone that Ling Han also recognized. It was Ai Kaifeng of the void-resisting sect. He had clearly also discovered Ling Han, yet he ignored him. Instead, his feet shifted slightly. At first, he had been running in the direction of Ling Han, but now he had deviated slightly. Because the distance between the 2 of them was still quite far, when he ran to the same level as Ling Han, he should also be far away from Ling Han. Ling Han knew that this was not because Yi's standards had become higher, and he did not recognize this old friend of his. On the contrary, it was precisely because he regarded Ling Han as a good friend that he deliberately did not recognize him, lest he dragged him down with him. But was Ling Han the kind of person who would not lend a helping hand when his friend was in trouble? He immediately soared up and went to greet Yi, saying, "Long time no see, brother Yi." Ling Han. Ai Kaifeng involuntarily let out a roar. He had long disliked Ling Han, but he had not succeeded because of an rant's obstruction. Now that it was Ling Han's turn, his anger naturally flared up again. Moreover, Ling Han was acquainted with it. He's a secret of the immortal mansion, run. Yi sent out a wave of divine sense, and a seal under his feet glowed. Ping, he stomped down, and when his figure shot up again, his speed suddenly increased greatly. So that was how it was. Otherwise, he would definitely have been captured by Ai Kaifeng long ago. Don't even think of running. Ai Kaifeng laughed coldly. And Ran was not by Ling Han's side. Very good, now there was no one who could stop him from killing. He made a move, grabbing at Ling Han with one hand and grabbing at Yi with the other. He wanted to capture both of them at the same time. He was naturally very confident in this. Ling Han was only a heavenly soul, while Yi was only a yin soul. Even if the 2 of them were multiplied by 100 million, they would still not be his match. Ling Han had long since been displeased with this fellow, and he similarly punched out with both fists. One punch blasted towards Yi, helping him neutralize Ai Kaifeng's attack, while the other punched in front of him. Ping ping. Two heavy sounds rang out at almost the same time. Chapter 2162. A Beautiful Romance. What? AI Kaifeng simply could not believe his eyes. His two attacks had been easily resolved, and the person who had attacked him was Ling Han. How was this possible? He almost wanted to rub his eyes to confirm if this was real. A mere heavenly soul had actually been able to resolve his attacks, and he had even launched two attacks at the same time. Was he trying to defy the heavens? Ling Han. Though he had been running all this while, his divine sense naturally had everything that was happening in the surrounding space under his control, and he could clearly see this scene. He was about to be scared to death. Back then, Ling Han's strength was similar to his. That was why the two of them had become friends after fighting. However, only 10,000 years had passed. How had this fellow become so powerful? In an instant, the three of them stopped at the same time. However, Yi and AI Kaifeng had stopped in fear. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Brother Yi, it's been a long time since we last met. Aren't you going to have a drink and talk?" Yi laughed loudly. "As long as you can defeat this fellow, I will naturally accompany you. It's a small matter." Ling Han nodded. Meanwhile, AI Kaifeng was about to explode from anger. Two mere dividing soul stages actually dared to say that they wanted to kill him. This was a huge joke. Ling Han had indeed resolved his attack, but how could he use his full strength against a dividing soul? Furthermore, Ling Han had definitely used some kind of precious artifact. If not, no secret technique would be able to allow a dividing soul to cross the immortal mansion. Reckless, AI Kaifeng charged over. Since he had stopped running, this was a good thing for him. Ling Han placed his hands behind his back. When AI Kaifeng charged over, he clenched his right fist and punched back. Of course, AI Kaifeng would not show weakness. He punched out with his right fist as well, wanting to destroy Ling Han's body in one move. Bang! The two fists instantly collided. Strictly speaking, they were separated by about 10 meters, but the fist force from both parties had already collided first. Rules and origin energy were both bursting forth, emitting a startling radiance. Then, a shockwave rippled out. With a bang, because he was standing nearby and watching the battle, he was instantly sent flying, coughing up blood. He was greatly shocked and hurriedly tapped the air with his feet. Light patterns appeared on the soles of his shoes, allowing him to suddenly accelerate. He was actually even faster than the impact of the aftershock. AI Kaifeng only felt a strong force rushing towards him, and his feet couldn't help but start to retreat. He couldn't help but be overwhelmed with shock, because not only did Ling Han not retreat, he took advantage of the situation to attack. In an instant, AI Kaifeng's outlook on life was distorted. He had actually been forced back by a heavenly soul. To beat back this was a nightmare. Yes, it must be a dream. Otherwise, how could such an unimaginable thing happen? But his rationality told him that this was not a dream, but something that had really happened. The one with the surname AI, you have repeatedly mocked me just because your cultivation level is higher than mine, and you even want to kill me. Heh, so what if your cultivation level is higher? I'll beat you to death. Ling Han attacked mercilessly, and each of his punches was aimed at AI Kaifeng's lower body. It was as if he wanted to beat a bird to death. AI Kaifeng was furious, embarrassed, and shocked. He was actually not a match for Ling Han. But not only did Ling Han dare to turn around and attack him, but he was also targeting his younger brother. As the saying went, one shouldn't hit someone's face in a fight, but the importance of one's younger brother was naturally above one's face. "I'm going to kill you," he roared in fury. "You couldn't kill me in the past, and it's even more impossible for me to kill you now. You can only be beaten to death by me," Ling Han said coldly. Previously, his strength was inferior, and he had been focused on escaping safely. Thus, he was not in the mood to tangle with him. But now, it was time to settle the score. Pai Kaifeng's legs instantly shrunk back when his fist landed on his little brother, and an expression of extreme pain appeared on his face. Even if he had cultivated to the immortal palace tier, he would still have weaknesses, and his little brother was one of the weakest parts. "Fuck, did I provoke you? You keep finding fault with me again and again. Why are you so despicable? Ling Han threw a few more punches and knocked AI Kaifeng to the ground. Then he raised his leg and ruthlessly stomped down on the area between his legs. Ao! AI Kaifeng's whole body bent like a large prawn, and he felt as if his balls had shattered all over the ground. It was incredibly uncomfortable. You still want to kill me? Fuck, if I don't trample you to death, you bastard. Ling Han became more and more angry, and his stomps became more and more vicious. He did not simply stomp a few times, but rather every step was imbued with the power of regulation. With each stomp, it was as if the heavens and earth were collapsing, and the destructive power was incredibly terrifying. Since AI Kaifeng was from the void-resisting sect, he definitely had life-saving techniques, but he had obviously already used them before this. Thus, he could only be trampled by Ling Han, becoming weaker and weaker and not far from death. He was both angry and shocked. Could it be that he was going to become the first secret emperor to have his dick trampled to death? This would cause his name to go down in history for thousands of years to come. However, Ling Han did not seem to have any intention of giving him a quick death. He simply stared at his lower body and stomped on it. Poo pew pew. Blood spurted out, and AI Kaifeng felt his consciousness become more and more blurry. Death was quickly enveloping him. Ling Han showed no mercy. Whoever wanted to kill him, he would take their life. This was karma, and it did not matter who it was. Poof. He stomped down again, and AI Kaifeng's body was instantly torn into pieces. Slaughter, metal, lightning, and other incredibly destructive powers rushed into his mind, directly destroying his spirit. A secret emperor died in such a humiliating manner. At the side, he was already stunned. He was a monarch himself, and he could even be ranked at the top among monarchs. However, he had never thought that a heavenly soul could slaughter an immortal mansion, and a secret emperor at that. How vast was the gap between him and Ling Han? Brother Ling, I have to say that I'm convinced. Previously, he had always called Ling Han by his name, and only now did he call him Brother Ling. This was a sign that he was truly convinced by Ling Han. Monarchs were naturally proud, but Ling Han was so powerful that monarchs could only look up to him, to the extent that they could only kneel and look up to him. Thus, no matter how proud he was, he could only admit this gap and be willing to be Ling Han's lackey. Ling Han chuckled, patted Yi's shoulder, and said, I am currently being pursued by a celestial king. Let's hurry and leave this place. Yi was speechless. He was a dividing soul, yet he was being pursued by an immortal mansion, and was able to repeatedly escape with his life. This made him feel very proud. However, compared to Ling Han, he was thrown into the gutter. He was being pursued by a celestial king. In the 9 heavens and 10 earths, celestial kings were the most powerful. Even a celestial king had not been able to kill Ling Han, so how heaven-defying were Ling Han's methods? Ling Han's words were naturally exaggerated, but there was not much difference between them and the truth. Celestial King Ling, you would definitely not let him leave. Before this, there had also been more than one celestial king who had wanted to kill Ling Han, but hadn't he still managed to escape? Then let's go. They set off, not caring about the consequences. They would think about it after leaving the mystery realm. They focused on hurrying along, but after entering the dense forest, they had no choice but to slow down. The insect thorns that had been left here were too terrifying, and a single touch would be fatal. After spending 7 days like this, they finally exited the mystery realm. They hurriedly got on their mounts and fled without a trace. Yi suddenly said, Brother Ling, can I follow you? Chapter 2164. Next, Ling Han's plan was to first pick up his parents, Helian Xuanxue, and the others, and then go to the Heaven Saint Palace to learn his son, and then go to the void-resisting sect while he was at it. He didn't have a good impression of the Sealed Love Palace and the void-resisting sect, so he entered the void-resisting sect as a springboard to investigate the mysterious Sealed Love Palace, and secondly to empty out the treasure trove of this great sect. No matter what, he had to make them pay some interest first. He spread out the regulations of space, and then added the regulations of time, and his whole person became ethereal. Even time and space seemed to be thrown into chaos, and his explosive speed was astonishingly fast. He then tried to put on the pair of bamboo shoes, and once activated, his speed skyrocketed tenfold. This made his speed comparable to an ascending origin tier. Ling Han couldn't help but smile in satisfaction. Now, as long as it wasn't a celestial king attacking, he didn't need to hide in the Black Tower when facing any attack and could completely use his current methods to resist. However, even the extreme speed of an ascending origin tier couldn't compare to the methods of a celestial king. Ling Han used a whole 7 months' time to return to the rock heaven. It was still the same heaven and earth, but Ling Han's mood was completely different. The Rock Palace was originally the #1 force in the rock heaven, and even ranked in the top in the whole Western celestial realm, but now the master of the rock heaven had been changed to the Four Seas Palace, and the territory that originally belonged to the Rock Palace was all raised with the flags of the Four Seas Palace. Everyone in the area was forced to change their faith to the Four Seas Palace, and worship Shangzhui. Faith was a kind of power. This wasn't the power of heaven and earth, but was excavated by later generations. The power of a single person was insignificant, but when gathered together, they could explode with mighty power that would shock even elites. However, this kind of power could only be used by celestial kings because it didn't belong to the power of heaven and earth, and was outside of the regulations. Ordinary cultivators couldn't use it at all, and only celestial kings that reached the height of heaven could use the power of faith for themselves. Ling Han shook his head and released the 4 women from the Black Tower, and then advanced under Hunyo's guidance. About 10 days later, they arrived at a high mountain. This place was only a mere 10,000 miles from the Rock Mountains, and elites would arrive in no time. "Look, in the valley below is my father-in-law and mother-in-law," Hunyo said. Though she hadn't held a wedding ceremony with Ling Han yet, with how she did things her own way, what would she care about? She directly called her parents-in-law and mother-in-law. Ling Han nodded. He was so excited that he couldn't take a step forward. "Let's go." The queen gave Ling Han a hand and led him down the mountain. Hunyo was not to be outdone, and hurriedly snatched over Ling Han's other arm, causing bewitching Maiden Ro to pout. They descended from the mountain and entered the valley. "Oh my God, there are so many people here." Ling Han originally thought that there would only be his parents, Helian Shu and Shue, and a few others. Adding them up, there would only be a dozen or so people, but now there were tens of thousands of people in this valley. "Who are you?" Someone discovered Ling Han's group of 5 and immediately berated them. "You dare trespass into the Peach Blossom Land? Are you tired of living?" Ling Han frowned slightly. This person looked to be in his 40s, and had the cultivation level of the mountain river tier. The flame of his life had probably been burning for more than 3,000 years. In the ancient realm, he could definitely be called a super genius. However, in the celestial realm, this could only be said to be average. This person's talent in martial art was average, yet he could advance into the mountain river tier at around 3,000 years old. He must have received the support of a tremendous amount of cultivation resources, and had practically forcibly pulled himself to this height. What made Ling Han frown was not the problem of this person's cultivation level, but rather that his attitude was too overbearing. Even if others accidentally trespassed, he could very well ask them to leave peacefully. "My name is Ling Han. Who is the person in charge here?" "I would like to pay a visit," Ling Han said. Because he was about to see his parents, he suppressed his displeasure. "What a joke! You trespassed into the Peach Blossom Land, and you still have delusions of meeting our valley master?" That person scoffed, appearing to be extremely disdainful. "Hua Ming, what is it?" Another man walked over. He looked to be in his 30s, yet his cultivation level had reached the Sun-Moon tier. In truth, he was a few hundred years older than that person just now, though he looked relatively young. "Great-granduncle Zilu." The person from before hurriedly bowed respectfully. These 5 people trespassed here, and even said that they wanted to meet the ancestor. "Ha!" The person behind couldn't help but laugh coldly. His eyes swept over Ling Han and the others, and he was just about to rebuke them when his eyes suddenly lit up. He was instantly charmed by Hunyo and the others. Lord Valley Master is not someone you can meet just because you want to. However, if there is anything, feel free to tell me. In any case, I am the protector of this place, he said proudly. Ling Han felt that this was inconceivable. They were obviously only in the Mountain River tier, and one in the Sun Moon tier, so why did they feel so good about themselves? Could it be that they thought this was the ancient realm, and not the celestial realm? Otherwise, where did such a strong sense of superiority come from? Helian Sun Shui, Li Si Chan, Zhu Xianer, Shui Yenyu. Ling Han spoke out many names in a single breath. The person behind involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air. How dare you actually dare to call the matriarchs by their names. You deserve to die 1,000 times. When he said the word, die, he brazenly made a move and clawed at Ling Han's chest. He actually really wanted to tear open Ling Han's heart and kill him. Ling Han was even more displeased. He stretched out a finger, and that person instantly turned into a wooden statue. He couldn't even move a finger. How dare you? You actually dare to make a move against the people of our Peach Blossom Spring. Don't you know that we are under the protection of the Rock Palace? Kill him. Seeing that Ling Han actually dared to make a move, the people nearby all drew out their weapons and surrounded Ling Han and the others. Their main target was Ling Han. The 4 women were all delicate beauties, especially the Empress and Hu Niu, who no one dared to profane at all. Ling Han humphed, and his aura shook slightly. Pa, pa, pa. These people suddenly fell to the ground, and the weapons in their hands also fell to the ground. Enemy invasion. Guards, move out. Someone made a big fuss. In a short while, a team of 100 people appeared, all of them in the Mountain River tier. They once again surrounded Ling Han and the others, but only surrounded them without attacking. It was unknown whether it was because they didn't receive the order to attack, or because they were afraid of Ling Han's strength. After a while, the crowd parted, and a young man walked out through the crowd. He looked only about 20 years old, and the fire of life had only burned for a few hundred years, but his cultivation level had shockingly reached the Genesis tier, far surpassing everyone here. His talent in martial art was very outstanding. This young man was dressed in a white robe and held a folding fan in his hand. The air of arrogance was practically overwhelming. Young Master Long. Once young Master Long arrives, he will definitely be able to suppress everything. Daring to be impudent in our Peach Blossom Spring, you really don't know how the word death is written. Everyone shouted loudly, as if they were filled with confidence in this young man. The white-robed young man was also incredibly arrogant. He first glanced disdainfully at Ling Han, and then turned to Hu Niu and the others, his eyes instantly bursting with an astonishing brilliance. He humphed and said, "You, take your own life." These words of his were said to Ling Han. Ling Han was surprised. What the hell were these people? Wasn't this the valley where his parents lived? Why had so many strange people come out? Chapter 2165. The young man in white stared at Ling Han, looking displeased. I told you to kill yourself, and you actually didn't do it. Do you want to die a painful death? Ling Han shook his head, looked back at Hu Niu and the others, and said, Have we entered a den of thieves? How dare you? The young man in white was furious, and reached out to grab Ling Han, wanting to capture this disrespectful person. Everyone waved flags and shouted, cheering for this young man. Pung! The young man's hand directly grabbed Ling Han's chest. Could kill this audacious maniac. He actually dares to come here and behave atrociously. The surrounding people all shouted excitedly. In their eyes, it was normal that Ling Han couldn't fight back, because this young man could almost be called the top elite of the valley. A scream was heard, but it wasn't Ling Han, but the young man in white. He used his left hand to hold his right wrist, his expression full of pain. The 5 fingers on his right hand were twisted in an exaggerated way, causing one's ass to tighten and feel a chill. In an instant, there were gasps all around. How was this possible? Cheng Jilong was a Genesis tier great elite, and almost called the top elite of the valley. How could he hit someone and break his own fingers? Release young Master Long. We are honored guests of the Rock Palace. Do you know what kind of force the Rock Palace is? It's not something you can afford to offend. Everyone quickly began to talk, and this time, they used the Rock Palace to pressure him. These people were too uninformed. Didn't they know that the Rock Palace had been forced to disband? Ling Han shook his head and suddenly released a long howl at the sky, his voice rolling like a dragon's roar. Shio, shio, shio. Instantly, more people leaped out from the valley. Without reaching the severing mundane tier, they didn't have the ability to fly in the celestial realm. Ancestor. First Madam. Second Madam. Everyone bowed to the people who had just arrived, their expressions respectful. Ancestor, you must ask the powerhouses of the Rock Palace to seek justice for Long. The white-clothed youth knelt in front of a middle-aged man and woman. Not only did this madman trespass into our valley, he even injured the dragon. Husband. There was a shriek, and a beautiful woman had already charged out, pouncing towards Ling Han. Then, another beauty rushed out and threw herself at Ling Han, then the third and the fourth. Everyone was dumbfounded. These young madams were the wives of the Valley Master. Although they had never seen the Valley Master before, they were told that he would return one day. But why did they throw themselves at a strange man? Wait a minute, everyone suddenly came to a realization. Could this strange man be Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang also rushed over, pouncing towards their precious son. Father, mother. Ling Han called out, feeling that his eyes were a little wet. Even if he was a monarch tier invincible among his peers, there would always be a soft spot in the depths of his heart. Seeing this scene, even the most idiotic person would naturally understand who Ling Han was, and also know what a huge mistake they had made. That white-clothed youth also came back to his senses. His face was completely red. He had been humiliated in public, but the two ancestors not only did not care about him in the slightest, but were instead extremely warm towards the murderer, which made him even more furious. Ling Han's eyes swept over. Lu Yutong, Li Sichan, Zhu Xian, Helian Sun Shui, and the other girls were all by his side, all of them showing wild joy, which made him involuntarily feel moved. He said, "I've kept you guys waiting." Meanwhile, Hunyao yawned, looking bored. At the same time, she was also slightly displeased. She had finally taken these bewitching girls away from Ling Han's side, and now they had returned. These are. Ling Dongxing and his wife looked at the Empress, Hunyao bewitching Maiden Row, and the others, looking stunned. Though they were arranged here by Hunyao, Hunyao had never been here at all. Thus, Ling Dongxing and his wife's impression of Hunyao was still that of a child, and could not connect this goddess-like person in front of them with Hunyao when she was young at all. Ling Han smiled and said, "Let me introduce to everyone, this is Hunyao, Pu." Ling Dongxing and his wife, Helian Sun Shui, and the other girls all spluttered. Which of them had not seen Hunyao when she was young, but they always felt that this little girl would never grow up. Now that she was a young lady as beautiful as a flower, they could not believe it. What, can Yo not be this beautiful? Hunyao was very displeased, and bared her teeth with her hands on her hips. In this way, everyone nodded. This was definitely Hunyao. After a round of introductions, all the girls instantly became one. The Empress only opened her mouth to say a few words, and naturally made all the girls regard her as the center, completely convinced. Meanwhile, Ling Dongxing and his wife pulled Ling Han aside and kept asking questions. Father, mother, what's going on? A figure descended. It was a graceful and luxuriously beautiful woman, and she spoke to Ling Dongxing and his wife. Father, mother. Ling Han instantly looked surprised, and then came to a realization. Ling Dongxing and his wife both blushed slightly, and said to Ling Han, "Come, this is your sister, Ling Yuan." "Brother." The beautiful woman looked at Ling Han, revealing a surprised expression. "And he's your brother, Ling Han?" Yu Hongchang held her daughter's hand. The two girls stood together, and indeed, there was a 50 to 60% resemblance. Ling Han looked at his father, and couldn't help but give a thumbs up. His father was really awesome, giving him a sister that was even younger than his own son. However, in the celestial realm, age really wasn't that important. Everyone could easily live for tens of billions of years, and strictly speaking, they would be considered dead people. Brother, Ling Yueyan called out crisply. Ling Han smiled and said, Sister. Come, let's go in first and we'll talk slowly, Ling Dongxing said with a smile. They couldn't keep talking outside. They entered the house, and Ling Dongxing and his wife couldn't wait to ask about Ling Han's experiences in these years. However, Ling Han only spoke lightly and didn't mention the various dangers he had encountered, not wanting to make his parents worry. After talking about his matters, they naturally had to return to Ling Dongxing and his wife. Their experiences were much more ordinary. After being brought to the celestial realm by Hunyou, they settled down here, and then accidentally gave birth to Ling Yueyan. Then Ling Yueyan married and gave birth to 3 sons. Then these 3 sons married and had children. As a result, the valley became lively. Because there were so many people, and to make it easier to manage, they established a family-style force. Of course, this was practically a joke in the celestial realm. There wasn't even a severing mundane ancestor. However, because the people in the valley were isolated from the outside world, they couldn't help but be ignorant and arrogant. Added with the fact that they felt that they could rely on the rock palace, they slowly developed an arrogant atmosphere. In this generation, it was already out of control. Thankfully, this was the foot of the rock mountain, and ordinary people couldn't possibly come here. Those who were qualified to come would also ignore it for the sake of the rock palace. This caused the people in the valley to become even more arrogant and haughty. Then what about my brother-in-law? Ling Han asked. Chapter 2166. Ling Yueyan immediately frowned at Ling Han's question. What is it? Ling Dongxing asked hurriedly. Ling Yueyan wanted to speak, but stopped. Your brother isn't an outsider, so what happened? Yu Hongchang also asked. Under repeated questioning, Ling Yueyan finally said, It's Yifeng. What about Yifeng? Yu Hongchang asked. This Yifeng's surname was Cheng, and he was Ling Yueyan's husband, as well as the son-in-law of the Ling family. Ling Yueyan said, Yifeng said that Rock Palace was destroyed, and my Ling family has an unclear relationship with Rock Palace, so he wants to sever our relationship as husband and wife to avoid involving the Cheng family. What? Ling Dongxing immediately exploded in fury and slammed the table. At the time, the Cheng family had to lower themselves in order to establish this marriage with the Ling family, and it was also Cheng Yifeng who was the best at flowery words that charmed the naive and inexperienced Ling Yueyan. In truth, Ling Yueyan had too many choices at the time. Who knew how many clans were far more powerful than the Cheng family, but Ling Yueyan ultimately chose Cheng Yifeng. The Cheng family was a severing mundane tier force, and was naturally the smallest force in the rock heaven, but no matter how small, they were still stronger than the Ling family, so why did they spend so much effort? Naturally, it was because of the colossus behind the Ling family, the Rock Palace. The Cheng family's choice brought them great benefits. After becoming in-laws with the Ling family, the Cheng family received many precious dowries from the Ling family, and the clan's ancestor even broke through to the dividing Soul tier. But now, Rock Palace was destroyed by the Four Seas Palace, and the Cheng family was afraid that the Four Seas Palace would settle accounts, so they naturally wanted to cut ties with the Ling family. However, the Cheng family's status was too low, and they received the news too late, so they only reacted now. If the Four Seas Palace really wanted to settle accounts, why would they wait until today? All in all, since the Ling family was no longer of any use, and on the contrary, it might have an adverse impact on the Cheng family, he naturally had to get rid of this burden immediately. What destruction of the Rock Palace? Yu Hongchang's expression was filled with confusion. Look, Hunyou was still standing here. I'm not sure either. Ling Yueyan was at a loss. People like them were too ill-informed. Ling Han interrupted, Rock Palace has indeed undergone a major change. But that bastard brat shouldn't have abandoned Yu Yen at this time either. What is the meaning of this? Ling Dongxing slammed the table with a loud, ping-ping sound. His own daughter was actually abandoned by someone else, so of course he was furious. This shouldn't be Yifeng's original intention. He was forced by the family to say this. Ling Yuan was still speaking up for her husband. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Sister, let's pay a visit to the Chung family and see brother-in-law." Ling Yuan instantly looked troubled. A few days ago, after Cheng Yifeng returned to the Chung family, he hadn't returned. Today, she couldn't help but go to the Chung family, but was chased away by Cheng Yifeng, who said that he wanted to sever their relationship as husband and wife. Moreover, there were many people in the valley who were actually from the Cheng family. They came here because of the Ling family's resources. After all, Hunyo definitely wouldn't be stingy towards Ling Dongxing and his wife. Moreover, cultivation resources below celestial medicine really weren't much. These people would also immediately return to the Chung family. After all, the Ling family would no longer receive benefits from the Rock Palace, so what was the point of staying here? This, Ling Yuan said hesitantly. Her heart was still on her husband's side, and she hoped that he would change his mind. All members of my Chung family, listen up. Immediately pack up and return to the clan. At this moment, a person in the valley shouted loudly, his voice like rolling thunder. Yes, Clan Elder Tai Heng. The members of the Chung family all called out loudly and immediately began to pack up. They had all the benefits and now they wanted to run? Ling Han humphed and immediately shot out. His eyes swept over and he saw a man hovering in the sky, his hands clasped behind his back, an arrogant expression on his face. This was an elder of the Chung family, similar to an elder of a large sect. His name was Ching Tai Heng, and he was at the second severance. This kind of cultivation level was nothing in the celestial realm, but in this small valley, the strongest was only in the Genesis tier, so he naturally had enough right to look down on the people in the valley. Shameless villain, hurry up and get lost. However, if you eat from my Ling family and use my Ling family, you have to spit it all out, Ling Han said. And who do you think you are? Cheng Tai Heng looked down on Ling Han from high above. Because Ling Han had used the source power of heaven and earth to seal off his aura, it was impossible for anyone below Celestial King tier to determine the level of his cultivation level. Cheng Tai Heng naturally would not take Ling Han seriously. The Ling family only had the Rock Palace as their backing, so how could they have any elites or geniuses? In the valley, the members of the Chung family gradually packed up and were about to leave. Clan Elder Tai Heng. Cheng Ji Long leaped out and knelt down on one knee to Cheng Tai Heng. This person has humiliated me before, so please act, Clan Elder, and uphold justice for me. Cheng Tai Heng looked slightly surprised. Cheng Ji Long was the most outstanding member of the younger generation of the Chung family, and it was precisely because of this that he had been sent here. That was because the cultivation resources that he could obtain in the valley were far superior to those of the Chung family. But Cheng Ji Long was actually no match for Ling Han? How was this possible? However, his anger immediately made him forget about this. In any case, the Ling family was insignificant, so there was no need to take it to heart. He snorted and looked at Ling Han. How dare you? You even dare to touch a member of my Cheng family. Ling Han hated ingrates the most. More importantly, the Cheng family had gone too far, using his sister to obtain the resources of the Rock Palace. Now that the Rock Palace had fallen, they couldn't wait to draw a line between themselves and the Ling family. They could even cast their daughter-in-law aside. Damn, he was furious. Cheng Yifeng has 3 days to kneel with every step he takes and beg for forgiveness from my sister. Otherwise, I'll slaughter every member of the Chung family, leaving no one alive. Ling Han said coldly. If it weren't for the fact that Cheng Yuan's face was filled with anticipation, knowing that she had been completely controlled by Cheng Yifeng, he wouldn't have bothered to do this. Ingrates? He'd just kill them all. Ah, where did this madman come from? He really doesn't know his place. Cheng Tai Heng laughed coldly. Clan Elder, please uphold justice for me. Cheng Ji Long hurriedly pleaded again. All right. Cheng Tai Heng suppressed the slight suspicion in his heart. The Ling family definitely couldn't have any elites. He stretched out his right hand and moved to envelop Ling Han. Wang, regulations transformed into a large jet black hand that grabbed out at Ling Han. Ling Han couldn't be bothered to make a move, and merely breathed out at Cheng Taiheng. A fierce gale howled, and that large black hand was instantly blown into pieces. Meanwhile, the speed of the gale did not decrease, and immediately swept past Cheng Taiheng. Shwa, shwa, shwa. The gale was like a blade, and the flesh on Cheng Taiheng's body was shaved clean, leaving only his skeleton. Then, his skeleton was also slashed into smithereens. When the fierce gale had passed, Cheng Taiheng's whole person had also completely disappeared. There was a dead silence. Cheng Taiheng was a second Severance Grand Elder, and he was actually blown to death by a mere breath. This monster, he had to be a monster. Meanwhile, Cheng Zhilong's whole body was trembling, and an indescribable coldness rose up from the depths of his heart. His legs involuntarily trembled. Chapter 2168. If it were Ling Han, he wouldn't need Qing Yifeng to change his mind, and would directly smash him to death with a single punch. But since Ling Yuan was stubborn and dead set on him, he could only take a roundabout way. Once this prestige was established, as long as he was still alive, the Qing family would worship Ling Yuan as if she were their ancestor, not daring to show the slightest bit of disrespect. Han, you're becoming more and more promising, Yu Hongchang sighed. It was her son who rescued her from prison, allowing them to reunite as husband and wife, and it was also Ling Han who allowed them to enter the celestial realm and advance into the Genesis tier with ordinary talent. This was something they didn't even dare to think about before. Now, Ling Han once again became the pillar of the family, able to withstand the wind and shelter from the rain. Nyo's Ling Han is the best. Hu Nyo hung from Ling Han's back, her small face filled with pride and satisfaction. Helian Sun Shui and the other girl's eyes were also filled with brilliance, looking as charming as water. Ahem, I won't disturb you guys anymore. The Lunar King turned and left. I'll run too. Yi Shuang also sensibly left. Ling Dongxing, his wife, and Ling Yuan all left the house, leaving the space for Ling Han's large group of beauties. Husband. The girls all pounced at once, kissing Ling Han madly. More than 10,000 years, they missed him so much. Ling Han hugged them on both sides, and was also extremely rueful. After so many years, his family was finally reunited. The girls cried and laughed and cried, causing Hu Nyo to feel extreme disdain. They were really children. They didn't do anything shameful, and just talked about their experiences in these years. They talked for 3 days, and the Qing family finally arrived. The messenger was only in the mountain river tier, and it would still take some time for him to cross the mountains. Thus, it took him more than a day to return. Then, because of Ling Han's sudden appearance, the Qing clan discussed for more than a day what kind of strategy they should adopt. When the 3rd day was about to end, they finally came to a decision and sent someone over. The Qing family didn't send a large force, and only sent 7 people, 6 old men and 1 young man. The 6 old men were all elders of the Qing family, and had long broken through to the severing mundane tier, and 3 of them had even reached the 4th severance. The last young man only looked 18 or 19, but the aura he exuded shockingly reached the severing mundane tier. His name was Qing Wuya, and he was a prodigy of the previous generation of the Qing clan. He had used a mere 30 million years to advance into the severing mundane tier. This was an extremely astonishing achievement, and he was also the #1 prodigy in the history of the Qing clan. 7 severing mundane tiers were all here, and that was about 2/3 of the peak strength of the Qing clan. It could be seen just how much importance they attached to Ling Han. Of course, they still didn't use their full strength because the Grand Elder of the Qing clan had broken through to the dividing soul tier not long ago. He hadn't come, which meant that the Qing clan believed that 7 severing mundane tier Grand Elders were enough to suppress Ling Han. What audacity! Get out here! Shouted one of the Qing family's elders. He was ranked 3rd in the family's hierarchy. The 5th elder looked at the suppressed Cheng Zhilong and couldn't help but reveal a pained expression. He was Cheng Zhilong's direct ancestor, and Cheng Zhilong was the future hope of his bloodline. He was counting on Cheng Zhilong to succeed him. He quickly descended and pressed his hand on the boulder. He wanted to move the boulder away and save his descendant. Cheng Jilong had been tormented until he was weak, and even his cries of pain were like the cries of a mosquito. But now that his ancestor had come, he couldn't help but become extremely excited. He actually became spirited and shouted, "Ancestor, save me! Quickly save me! Also, you must kill that villain and tear him into pieces." He actually made him suffer 3 days of hell-like torture. He definitely had to take revenge. If he didn't take revenge, he wouldn't be human. Ling Han had already come out. He crossed his arms and just leaned against the door frame. He didn't stop them, but calmly said, "Come, there's something wrong with your brains. I already said that Cheng Yifeng would kneel with every step." The third elder looked at Ling Han in disdain and said, "Did you eat the bile of a celestial dragon? You actually dare to make an enemy of our Cheng clan." "You didn't answer the question, so I'm going to teach you a lesson," Ling Han said slowly. "Ah." On the other side, the fifth elder's expression changed drastically. At first, he very casually reached out to pick up the boulder, but when he exerted force, he discovered that this boulder seemed to have become one with the earth and couldn't be moved. He couldn't even lift it by the slightest bit. He was naturally shocked. He didn't realize that this boulder looked like a treasure. How could it be as heavy as a planet? No, it was even heavier than a planet. With the power of a severing mundane ancestor, it would be no problem for him to lift a planet. The other 6 elders also discovered his strange behavior and couldn't help but turn around. The third elder frowned and said, "Old 7, what are you doing?" He was very displeased. At this moment, morale was at its peak, and you actually mumbled. It wasn't like you were constipated, it was very embarrassing. I can't move it," the fifth elder said, his face completely red. This made him feel extremely ashamed. "What?" The other 6 elders didn't believe him. There were still a few patches of moss growing on this boulder, so it obviously couldn't be a precious tool and was only an ordinary boulder. "You can't even move a boulder? Is there something wrong with your brain? You actually said such stupid words." "I'll do it." The 6th elder jumped out. Their ranking was based on the time they broke through to the severing mundane tier, but some people surpassed them later and their cultivation level might be higher. For example, the 5th elder was only a 3rd severance, but the 6th elder was a 4th severance. The 5th elder moved aside, and the 6th elder took over, but the result was the same. The 6th elder's face was completely red, and he even let out a loud fart, but the boulder still didn't move in the slightest. This time, the expressions of the 7 elders all changed. They knew that it wasn't that the 5th elder was crazy, but that there was something wrong with this boulder. Cheng Jilong also stopped shouting. He stood there blankly, his eyes unfocused as if he had become stupid. "I'll do it," Cheng Huia said, his expression dark. He was the 10th elder of the Cheng family, and also the strongest person in the severing mundane tier, and it was very likely that he would break through to the dividing soul tier in the future. Thus, even though he was ranked last, his weight was very heavy. "10th, you do it," the other 6 said. Cheng Huia did not reach out to lift the stone. Instead, he took a deep breath and began to circulate his immortal technique. He wanted to send the stone flying. This time, Cheng Jilong was instantly afraid. He immediately changed from a dumbstruck and lifeless expression to one of extreme excitement, almost dancing with joy. "10th clan elder, I'm still down there. I'm still down there." Under the bombardment of immortal arts, he would definitely be blasted into pieces. However, Cheng Huia turned a blind eye to it. Right now, it wasn't a matter of the life or death of a clansman, but the face of the Cheng family. If he couldn't even deal with a rock, he would lose his face to the ends of the earth. "Explode!" He punched out. Immortal characters bloomed on his fist as its power surged. The other 6 elders were all secretly astonished. They were all in the severing mundane tier, but Wuya was clearly stronger than them. Moreover, he was not just a little bit stronger, and this was completely evident in this strike. Boom! The power of the fist surged, but the stone glowed faintly with a celestial light, as if it was impervious to all magic. Not to mention the fact that the stone was not damaged, even Cheng Jilong, who was underneath it, was unharmed. The 7 great elders of the Cheng clan were all aghast. Chapter 2169. Let's try together, the eighth elder said, his voice trembling slightly. This was too frightening. Even the 10th elder's attack had no effect. If this rock was a treasure, they would accept it and wouldn't be so terrified. More importantly, this was an ordinary rock, which was why it was frightening. Okay. They didn't give up. The rock had such power, so it had to be a trick of Ling Han's. If the 7 of them couldn't do anything to it, it meant that they were no match for Ling Han even if they worked together, so they'd better run quickly. They worked together, and under the command of the 3rd elder, the 7 of them attacked at the same time. Hong, a terrifying light blasted on the rock, creating a dazzling light. Wang, the rock also glowed slightly. It seemed insignificant, but it blocked the attacks of the 7 severing mundane ancestors. The 7 elders all paled. Ling Han didn't move at all, and only a rock showed them what it meant to be invincible. Run! The 7 of them turned at the same time, and were about to flee, overjoyed. Fortunately, Ling Han didn't move. He still leaned against the door, his arms crossed, looking like he didn't care about them at all. Let's let you be arrogant. When we return to the Chung family, we'll ask the ancestors to suppress you. Shio. They instantly rushed to the entrance of the valley, but with a blur, they actually returned to the valley, where they had started. What's going on? The 7 of them were shocked, but they ran even faster. They came to the entrance of the valley again, but when they took another step, there was a blur, and they returned to the place where they had started. Damn it. They were about to cry. This happened twice in a row, so it couldn't be a change in the structure of the heaven and earth, but the result of someone casting a spell, and this person could only be Ling Han. A person, with his arms crossed, leaning against the door, could play with 7 severing mundane ancestors in the palm of his hand? What kind of monster are you? Run again. The 7 of them charged again, and it seemed that this was the only way to alleviate the fear in their hearts. Thus, Chung Jilong was fortunate enough to witness this scene. The 7 elders continuously charged towards the entrance of the valley. They had just arrived when they instantly reappeared where they were, as if they were not humans at all, but merely chess pieces that were being manipulated at will. His mouth was half open. At this moment, the shock in his heart had already surpassed the pain in his body. Of course, this was only for a moment. Very soon he began to moan again. However, his throat had long been hoarse, and now his voice was pitifully low. After failing more than 10 times, the 7 elders stopped running. They knew that it was a waste of energy and would only be a joke to others. What do you want? The 3rd elder looked at Ling Han, forcing himself to remain calm. However, his trembling legs betrayed him. It couldn't be helped. Ling Han's strength had already made him unable to fathom it. Perhaps he was even stronger than the old ancestor. Ling Han was surprised and said, "Are you guys stupid? You came here so aggressively, and why are you asking me what I want? What I want is very simple. How much has the Chung family taken from my Ling family? You have to spit it all out. Also, have Cheng Yifeng come to see you on his knees. Don't you understand these words?" He shook his head and then said, "Forget it. I don't trust your intelligence, so it's better that you all stay here." He waved his hand, and 7 stones flew over. The large ones were as large as millstones, while the small ones were only the size of a fist. Ling Han casually threw, and the 7 stones fell towards the 7 elders of the Chung family. Peng. The 7 of them were pressed onto the ground at the same time. There was a stone pressing down on their bodies, and whether it was the size of a millstone or the size of a fist, they were all pressed down to the point that they could not move. The stones were only a medium. What was important was the regulations that Ling Han had applied on them. The 7 great severing mundane ancestors all began to scream in agony. This was the grinding of regulations, and even if their willpower was as strong as steel, they could not possibly withstand it. Ling Han shook his head and returned to his room. He naturally would not take a battle of this level to heart. He was dragging his feet like this only for the sake of his family. On the other side, the Chung family. 2 whole days had passed since the 7 elders of the Chung family had set out here. For a Zhan mundane, He would be able to call back in at most 30 minutes, so how could there be no news until now? Furthermore, the people that he had sent out to scout for information had not returned. It was not just one batch, but several batches that had gone out had disappeared. It was as if the Peach Blossom Spring was a bottomless pit. The longer they waited, the more uneasy the ancestor of the Chung family felt. A servant suddenly reporting to Lord Patriarch, the patriarch of the Jing clan requests an audience. Jing Kebeng. The patriarch of the Chung family faltered slightly. Then he suddenly laughed loudly and said, "He has come just at the right time. Jing Kebeng wants to form a marriage alliance with our Chung family, so I might as well drag him down with me to probe the Ling clan." The patriarch of the Chung family stood up and personally went out to receive them. "I can't invite him in. I'll go personally." After a while, he saw that he had invited two people back into the main hall. Of these two newcomers, one was an elder with white eyebrows and a white beard, and he looked kind and benevolent. The other was a young man, and he was very bashful. It was as if he would blush with every word he said. "Brother Ching, what do you think of my suggestion from last time?" The elder with white eyebrows and a white beard asked. He was the patriarch of the Jing clan, Jing Kebe. The Jing clan was a two-star power, and originally had a much higher status than the Chung family. However, after the patriarch of the Chung family had stepped into the dividing soul tier, the two clans were on equal footing. Due to some kind of pressure, the Jing clan really wanted to form a marriage alliance with the Chung family, so that they could resist another power together. The patriarch of the Chung family pretended to be silent. After a while, he said, "I won't hide it from Brother Jing. This old man is currently worried about something, and I don't want to think about anything else for now." "What is Brother Ching worrying about?" Jing Kebeng asked, but he was sneering in his heart. It was most likely that the Chung family wanted to ask for some benefits from him. The patriarch of the Chung family thought about it, and then told Jing Kebeng about the matter between Ling Yueyan and Cheng Yifeng. However, in his mouth, it was naturally said that Ling Yueyan was unreasonable, and that Cheng Yifeng wanted to divorce his wife. However, Ling Yuan's maiden family was overbearing, which put him in a very difficult position. If he used violence, it would damage the harmony between them, but if he didn't use violence, he wouldn't be able to withstand their unreasonable behavior. It's simple." Jing Kebeng laughed loudly. "Come, I'll make a trip with Brother Cheng. I'll play the good cop, and you'll play the bad cop. We'll completely scare that unruly family." "All right." The patriarch of the Chung family had been waiting for him to say this. "Let's go." The patriarch of the Chung family didn't bring anyone else with him this time. He simply headed towards the Peach Blossom Spring with Jing Kebeng and that young man from the Jing clan. This young man was called Jing Dong, and he was the most outstanding member of the younger generation of the Jing clan. He was also the candidate that had been chosen to form a marriage alliance with the Chung family. He had cultivated for less than 10 million years, and had already successfully advanced into the severing mundane tier. He was extremely extraordinary. The three of them moved as fast as the wind, and after merely 30 minutes, they had arrived at the entrance of the Valley of the Peach Blossom Spring. The expression of the patriarch of the Chung family immediately became serious. The people that he had sent out had all never returned, causing him to feel a strong sense of wariness towards this valley. In fact, he didn't even dare to rashly set foot into it. Yet, Jing Kebeng didn't have any qualms in this aspect. With a leap, he had already arrived at the center of the valley. "Fuck, what's going on?" Jing Kebeng was dumbfounded because there were 8 people lying uniformly in the valley. Their bodies were all pressed down by a rock of various sizes, and they were all moaning in pain. More importantly, these rocks were incredibly ordinary to begin with, and some were even as small as a fist. Even so, they were still pressing down on people to the point of moaning. Chapter 2170. Jing Kebeng's first reaction was that these people were joking, but the problem was that he recognized a few of them. They were all elders of the Chung family. When he went to the Chung family last time, he was received by these people. And among the 8 people, aside from one, the others were all severing mundane tier. "Are you guys playing house?" A whole bunch of people are purposely pressing a rock on their bodies. What's the point of humming? The head of the Chung family also came in, and his face couldn't help but change drastically. He had thought of countless possibilities, but he had never imagined such a scene. What kind of expert is hiding in this valley to actually be able to force Qing Wuya and the others to such a state? Moreover, these rocks were extremely ordinary in the first place, so why were they able to suppress these severing mundane grand elders to the point where they could only moan and not crawl back up? Hee, Brother Cheng, it seems like you owe me an explanation. Jing Kebeng was not stupid at all. Otherwise, how could he have reached the dividing soul realm, let alone become the head of a family? Something was wrong. It wasn't that the Chung family didn't resort to violence out of consideration for their feelings. Were these 7 severing mundane tears useless? The head of the Chung family said solemnly, Brother Jing, there might be a great enemy in the valley. We must not be careless. Fuck you. Jing Kebeng ridiculed in his heart. This originally had nothing to do with him at all. Moreover, he wanted to form a marriage alliance with the Chung family. His objective was to bind the Chung family together and resist the Lu clan together. This was because the Lu clan had produced a second dividing soul tier cultivator, and the Lu and Jing clans were mortal enemies. If the Lu family prospered, the Jing family would perish. If they did not seek outside help, they would be waiting for death. But before the foreign aid arrived, he had to go against a person or force of unknown strength first. How could he not be angry? However, the threat of the Lu family was real. The Jing family had to get the Chung family's help. All right, I can only help you. Who is in charge of the valley? Please show yourself, the head of the Chung family said loudly. Cheng Rong, you ingrate. You actually have the face to come see me. Ling Dongxing's voice rang out as he strode out, his face filled with rage. His own daughter was actually divorced by someone else. As her father, he was naturally enraged. He wanted nothing more than to kill everyone in the Cheng family. Cheng Rong was the head of the Qing family. When he heard Ling Dongxing call him by his name, he couldn't help but reveal an angry expression. Back then, Ling Dongxing could call him brother because the Ling family had the Rock Palace behind them. But now that the Rock Palace had become history, Ling Dongxing still wanted to be on equal footing with him. A mere Genesis tier was not even worth a fart in the celestial realm. Haha. Meanwhile, Jing Kebeng laughed loudly and said, How laughable. A measly Genesis tier cultivator is actually so audacious. Brother Cheng, you've really allowed others to ride all over your head. Lord Cheng, why don't you allow this junior to take action and suppress this ungrateful person? Jing Dong said proudly. He felt that the Chung family was really useless. They actually allowed a Genesis tier cultivator to strut around in front of a dividing soul tier. Cheng Rong's expression was livid. He had reservations in his heart. Ling Dongxing naturally couldn't suppress 7 great severing mundane tier grand elders. There had to be a mysterious elite in the valley. If he didn't show himself, he couldn't be at ease. The unknown was the scariest. Humph, haven't you played enough? He moved, grabbing at the stones on the 8 people's bodies. He manipulated his origin energy and transformed it into 8 large hands. Each of the hands held a piece of rock, and he wanted to lift these rocks. But his expression immediately changed in shock because the weight of these stones was far greater than he had imagined. He could only lift them by a tiny bit. Cheng Rong hurriedly withdrew the other 7 large hands. His 8 flashes of origin power merged into one, and he used all his strength to lift a stone. The stone shook slightly, but by an extremely small amount. This time, Jing Kebeng's expression also changed drastically. He hurriedly shouted at Jing Dong, Go! Jing Dong still didn't know what was good for him. Wasn't he just a measly Genesis tier cultivator? What did he need to have reservations about? He still wanted to fight and said, Patriarch, shut up and come with me. Jing Xiangbing directly moved and grabbed Jing Dong. Then he flew away. After leaving the valley, he breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly sped up. No one chased after him. Very good. Brother Jing, Brother Jing. Cheng Rong called loudly, but Jing Xiangbing ran even faster. Cheng Huiya and the others' expressions were ashen. They had initially thought that Cheng Rong would immediately be able to save them from their misery once he arrived. But in reality, Cheng Rong actually almost collapsed from exhaustion even lifting a stone. What kind of gap in strength was this? One had to realize that Ling Han had only casually moved a few stones over and hadn't used any formation. Yet, he had refined them for a few days and nights. They were trembling all over, completely unable to imagine Ling Han's strength. Cheng Rong's eyes flashed, and he suddenly turned around to run. There was a supreme elite in this valley, and he was definitely not someone he could stand against. Xiao, his figure leaped, and he was about to run out of the valley when his vision blurred, and he had already returned to his original position. What was going on? Was there a formation here? Cheng Huiya and the others were also indescribably shocked. It was one thing for them to keep running like ghosts, but why was Cheng Rong doing the same? After this happened a few times, Cheng Rong knew that it was impossible for him to escape, and so he stood still. His gaze fell on Ling Dongxing, and a savage expression appeared on his face. He wanted to take down this person. Perhaps he could take him as a hostage, and then there would be hope for him to escape. He suddenly pounced towards Ling Dongxing and then stretched out his hand, trying to grab Ling Dongxing's neck. Just as he was about to grab Ling Dongxing, his vision blurred, and he once again returned to his original position. His heart was filled with shock. He knew that with that elite present, there was absolutely no way he could take down Ling Dongxing. Brother Ling. He once again faced Ling Dongxing and became extremely courteous. No matter what, we are still relatives by marriage, and we should help each other and tide through this crisis together. Tide your sister. Ling Dongxing punched out. Cheng Rong wanted to dodge, but he immediately discovered that his body had been completely sealed, and it was extremely difficult for him to even lift a finger. Thus, this punch landed solidly on his body, and he was sent flying. Ling Dongxing was unforgiving, and he rushed over again. Peng, 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 a flurry of attacks. Cheng Rong screamed in pain. The power in his body had unknowingly been sealed, and he could only use his physique to take the attacks head-on. However, he wasn't a physique cultivator, and a dividing soul tier cultivator could only cultivate his physique to a slightly higher level than a Genesis tier cultivator. He wouldn't be killed by a Genesis tier cultivator, but he would still be in great pain. Ling Dongxing completely vented his anger and continuously attacked Cheng Rong, causing Cheng Rong to scream in pain. At the same time, he was also incredibly furious. He was a dividing soul tier elite, yet he was actually beaten like a dog by a Genesis tier cultivator. This was a great humiliation. But now, the only thing he could think of was how to resolve this crisis. If that mysterious elite wanted to kill him, there was no need for him to go through so much trouble, right? Thus, since he had suffered some physical pain, it was likely that his life wouldn't be in any danger. After fighting for about an hour, Ling Dongxing finally stopped. He had more or less vented enough. Where's Cheng Yifeng? Ling Dongxing asked. He had only beaten Cheng Rong to vent his anger, and the most important thing was to resolve the issue of his daughter's wedding cigarettes. He couldn't possibly let his daughter become a widow, right? He's in the Cheng family, Cheng Rong hurriedly replied. All of this had started because of Cheng Yifeng, and it was clear that it would also end because of him. Chapter 2172. Cheng Yifeng took a total of 7 days to reach the valley. This caused Ling Han to feel slightly gratified in addition to disappointment, because he had not thought that Cheng Yifeng would be so useless, actually taking 7 days to reach this place. However, he had persisted in the end, which meant that he still had a sliver of redeeming qualities. Ling Han would not let Cheng Yifeng off so easily. He gave him a good beating, making him completely subservient to Ling Yueyan, and only then did he relent. On the other hand, the Empress also pulled Ling Yueyan into special training, teaching her that she should be strong. Do not doubt the Empress's influence. She had a kind of charm that would make people unknowingly submit to her and obey her, which was attractive to both men and women. With this two-pronged approach, Ling Yueyan finally had that little bit of strength. Though she could not reach Ling Han's expectations, it was still much better than before. The Cheng family naturally had to bleed a lot. Though Ling Han had no intention of destroying the Cheng family, this clan was really unscrupulous. Ling Han did not hold back and exploited as much as he could, causing the members of the Cheng family to complain incessantly. But who could they blame? Everything they enjoyed now basically came from the Ling family, and they had even stepped on the Ling family when they had lost power. It was already very good that Ling Han had not destroyed the Cheng family. Towards Ling Yueyan's 3 sons as their uncle, Ling Han naturally would not be stingy, and gave them a large amount of cultivation resources. He was the Alchemy Emperor, and had now advanced into the ranks of 4-star alchemist, so any alchemical pill that he casually concocted would have supreme effects. Unfortunately, the step of severing mundane tier had to be taken by oneself. Either Ling Han had become a celestial king, and truly possessed some kind of mystical power of heaven and earth that could forcefully send others into the severing mundane tier. However, this kind of severing mundane tier would not have any battle prowess, and was completely an empty shell. However, Ling Han didn't care about this. As long as he reached the severing mundane tier, he would have an unlimited lifespan. Moreover, after Ling Han became a heavenly venerable, he would escape from this heaven and earth. At that time, he would even be able to resolve the immortals' tribulation of others. At that time, the people by his side would truly become immortal and indestructible. He was invincible in the first place, and now that he was here, Ling Yueyan's 3 sons, as well as their sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons, were all filled with admiration for Ling Han and worshipped him as a god. Ling Han planned to leave with his parents, but Ling Dongxing and his wife said that they had no ambition, and they were used to living here, so they didn't want to leave. Not only them, but even Ling Yueyan, who was a member of the younger generation, felt the same. After living in peace for more than 10,000 years, they no longer had the spirit to take risks. Ling Han thought about it and did not force her. Based on his understanding of Shang Jiwei, she would not use his parents to threaten him to show up. With his reputation, neither the Cheng family nor the Jing family would dare to act recklessly. Thus, Ling Han decided to set out with Helian Sun Shui and the other girls. Hu Niu was naturally very displeased about this. She hadn't even shaken off the Empress and bewitching Maiden Ro, and now there was a bunch of little bewitching fairies. Damn it. She was just throwing a little tantrum and being a little jealous, and everything would be fine after a while. The Lunar King and Yi Shuang also said that they would follow Ling Han to explore. Additionally, they also wanted to enter the ancient realm if they had the chance, because Yi Shuang's home was in the ancient realm, and the Lunar King had not been to the ancient realm. Unfortunately, if one wanted to send someone down to the ancient realm, the Immortal Palace tier was the minimum requirement. Ling Han currently did not have this kind of ability, so he could only think about it in the future. He did not have too many attachments to the ancient realm. Most people had been brought to the celestial realm by him, and if he wanted to see people, he could go to the eastern celestial realm. After spending a few more days with his parents and younger sister, Ling Han set out on his journey. He was the kind of person who could not stop. He lived for martial art, and would also die for martial art. Though the Heaven Saint Palace was also in the Rock Heaven, there was still some distance from the Rock Palace. If they rushed over like this, they would need about 20 days' time, but there were a considerable number of teleportation gates in the Rock Heaven. It was too difficult to set up a teleportation gate that could cross between regions, and only 9th Heaven celestial kings like the Rock Origin Beast that was born with the spatial attribute could set it up. Thus, the teleportation gates that could cross between regions were only in the Rock Palace, which was now occupied and controlled by the Four Seas Palace. And because of the Rock Origin Beast, there were still a large number of low-level teleportation gates in the Rock Heaven that could allow people to come and go as they pleased in the Rock Heaven, saving a great deal of time. As an 8-star force, the Heaven Saint Palace naturally also had such teleportation gates that could reach directly. Thus, Ling Han's group decided to use the teleportation gates to travel. After all, who would be willing to work their legs when there were times when they could slack off? There were no benefits at all. The closest teleportation gate to them was in Green Sand Town. If they used the teleportation gate here, they could directly arrive at Red Cherry Town, which was at the foot of the Heaven Saint Palace's mountain. Of course, They couldn't directly enter the Heaven Saint Palace. What a joke! How could they just barge into an 8-star force? It only took them a little less than half a day to arrive at Green Sand Town, but they discovered to their surprise that there were actually people guarding the entrance to the town. Anyone who entered would have to undergo an incomparably strict search. Spatial artifacts in particular had to be handed over for inspection. And you said you'd hand over all your spatial artifacts? Then what's this? In front of Ling Han, someone was currently being searched, and a spatial artifact that he had kept close to his body was found. Grandpa, I forgot about this. The person being searched was a short old man with a fawning smile on his face. If you're dishonest, I'll confiscate it, the person being searched said coldly and was about to put the spatial artifact away. Return it to me. The old man pounced, looking like he was going to fight to the death. Kill. The 7 people at the entrance of the town moved at the same time, thrusting the spears in their hands at the old man. Ling Han humphed, and the aura of a great emperor surged over. Pa pa pa. The spears in the hands of the 7 people instantly fell to the ground. They couldn't help but be shocked, and turned to look at Ling Han, expressions of shock and terror on their faces. This person's strength was so strong, far above theirs. However, the 7 people quickly calmed down, and the person in the lead said, Sir, I advise you to mind your own business. We are disciples of the Dragon Universe Palace, and are currently under orders to arrest a few criminals, so you'd better cooperate obediently. Otherwise, we'll kill without mercy. Dragon Universe Palace. Ling Han looked at Hunyeo. He really hadn't heard of this force before. Hunyeo pondered for a moment and said, Oh, a small force of the Immortal Palace tier. Nyo has also heard of it by chance. Ling Han laughed. This Immortal Palace tier force was really audacious, actually daring to arrest people in the Rock Prung Heaven. Didn't they know that they could easily run into trouble? For example, Hunyeo, the young empress of the Rock Prung Palace. Of course, she had already lost her power, but if Ling Han was willing, he could completely use the name of the Four Seas Palace to swagger around. Now, the Four Seas Palace had the final say in the Rock Prung Heaven. This is also not a reason for you guys to abuse your power for private gain, Ling Han said calmly. These people obviously wanted to take this chance to make a big profit, and as long as they discovered that there was something good in the spatial artifact, they would take it out and keep it for themselves. And like this old man who secretly hid a spatial artifact, they would directly kill him ruthlessly, extremely vicious. Hee. Sir, do you have any dissatisfaction with the way our Dragon Universe Palace does things? With a cold laugh, a man in cyan walked out from the town, the aura of the dividing soul tear rolling out. Chapter 2173. The azure-robed man walked with his hands clasped behind his back, wearing an expression of disdain. He used his eyes to look askance at Ling Han, and when his eyes swept over the Empress and the others, he couldn't help but shine brilliantly. What beautiful women, and there was more than one. All of them were so beautiful that they could make one's heart flutter. The more Emperor tier or Monarch tier one was, the stronger their self-control would be. That was because they all had lofty goals to achieve, and naturally would not spend too much energy on pleasure. They would only move with the flow, and very few would deliberately pursue it. But the less talented a person was, the more they would be seduced by materialism and beauty, because they no longer had any room for improvement and naturally only wanted to seek pleasure. This azure-robed man was like that. Advancing into the dividing soul tier was also a fortuitous encounter. In the past, he had obtained a 9 refinements celestial pill concocted by a 5-star apothecary, which helped him push open the door to the dividing soul tier, but after advancing into the dividing soul tier, he could not advance any further. But the dividing soul tier was a qualitative leap from the severing mundane tier. He had always felt very good about himself, and with this single leap, who knew how many people could only look up to him? Kneel, the azure-robed man rebuked coldly, a hint of a sneer on his lips. He wanted nothing more than for Ling Han to resist. That way, he would have a reason to capture him. After all, the Dragon Universe Palace also cared about their reputation. If the bad reputation of him forcefully seducing a woman spread, he would be condemned by the masses, and the Dragon Universe Palace would be forced to expel him, or even punish him severely. Ling Han chuckled and countered with a question, "Do you want to die?" "How dare you?" The azure-robed man raised an eyebrow, but he was secretly delighted. "Very good, continue to seek death. You actually dare threaten a member of the Dragon Universe Palace? You are seeking your own death." Ling Han moved, a slap flying over. A frightening gale swept past, and the azure-robed man was instantly engulfed by the merciless storm. When the gale passed, he was only left with a set of teeth, which lightly fell to the ground. "This is the consequence of not knowing how to speak," Ling Han said calmly. He knew the azure-robed man's thoughts like the back of his hand, so he did not hold back in his attack. The 7 guards were so scared that their faces turned pale. That was Lord Ming Tong, a Sun Soul stage expert, but he had actually been killed with a single slap. "You guys?" Ling Han swept his gaze over them. "I'll spare your lives, but don't even think about doing evil in the future." He lightly clapped his hands, and 7 streams of energy shot out, instantly crippling the cultivation of the 7 people. The 7 people were at a loss. Without their cultivation, what else could they do? Ling Han naturally didn't care and started walking. Hu Niu giggled, ran over, raised her leg and kicked. Pa pa pa, with 7 kicks, the 7 people instantly disappeared in the air. "Remember to bring back a gift, okay?" She placed a jade hand above her eyes to make a faraway look, and said loudly towards the sky. Everyone couldn't help but smile. The little girl was still as mischievous as ever. Just as they were about to enter the town, they saw someone running out of the dense forest outside the town, waving his hands as he ran towards them. "Beautiful sister." Ling Han couldn't help but be surprised, because this was a woman, and one that he knew. Chen Shuangshuang, his future daughter-in-law. What a coincidence, running into this little girl everywhere. Ling Han stopped, and the women also stopped. Aside from Hu Niu, the Empress, bewitching Maiden Ro, and the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden who knew her identity, Helian Xuanxue and the other women thought that it was another of Ling Han's lovers, and instantly showed wary expressions. They didn't want Ling Han to have any more lovers to share their love with. "Big sister." Chen Shuangshuang pounced over, and didn't care that she was actually older than most of the women. Whenever she stuck to one, she would call her big sister, and touch the other's jade hand, her face full of stars. Ling Han found it strange. Daughter-in-law teasing her mother-in-law, what was this? Hey, if you have something to say it, don't be touchy. Also, quickly wipe away your saliva, he said. Chen Shuangshuang hurriedly stretched out a hand to wipe the corner of her mouth, and then suddenly made an "ah" and said, "I almost forgot the proper matter." Ling Han and the others couldn't help but sigh. This little girl was really insensitive, actually focusing on beautiful women. What proper matter? Ling Han asked smilingly. He naturally wouldn't lack patience towards his daughter-in-law, and his temper was very good. That junior brother Ling of mine is in danger. Aren't you all his distant relatives? Can you help him? Chen Shuangshuang asked. Tang, killing intent instantly surged up in Ling Han's heart. Who would want to harm her own son? Helian Xuanxue was even more anxious to grab Chen Shuangshuang's hands. What happened to Jianxue? Beautiful sister, you know junior brother Ling? Are you all distant relatives? Chen Shuangshuang asked curiously. She was a little dumbfounded. Why did junior brother Ling have so many distant relatives, and all of them were great beauties, so beautiful that they were bubbling? Ling Han immediately had the urge to beat someone up. Was this the time to be curious about this? He coughed and said, what happened to Jianxue? Only then did Chen Shuangshuang come to her senses. Junior brother Ling and I came out to train, and discovered an ancient tomb nearby. We obtained a celestial sword from inside, and in the end, those people from Dragon Universe Palace also discovered this place, and forced us to hand over the celestial sword. Junior brother Ling refused, and in the end, we started fighting. Chen Shuangshuang narrated, in the battle, junior brother Ling suffered a blow in order to save me, and in the end he was seriously injured and also poisoned. Relying on the medicine we had on us was impossible to cure. We wanted to go back, but those bastards from Dragon Universe Palace refused to let us go, and kept chasing after us, chasing us all the way here. Junior brother Ling's injuries were getting more and more serious, so I planned to barge into this town, use the transportation gate to return to the sect, and ask for reinforcements. In the end I met you all. I'm worried that junior brother Ling won't be able to wait that long. You all are very powerful, can't you all help? Ling Han grabbed her, and his feet were already flying. Lead the way. He was worried about his son, so he naturally could not hold anything back. Hong, all the power in his body spread out, and his figure shot out, incredibly fast. His other hand grabbed Hunyo and the others, and they instantly left the town. Chen Shuangshuang suddenly felt dizzy and uncomfortable. She wanted to vomit, but could not vomit no matter how hard she tried. Only after being asked a few times by Ling Han did she pull herself together and guide the way. She was shocked. Ling Han's speed was too fast, and had far surpassed the limit of the dividing soul tier. Do the people from Dragon Universe Palace know that you all are disciples of Heaven's Saint Palace? Ling Han asked. Otherwise, how could a mere immortal palace tier force dare to provoke an 8th Heaven Celestial King tier force? They know. Unexpectedly, Chen Shuangshuang nodded. We have long since revealed our identities, but they are still overbearing, and every move they make is fatal. Ling Han instantly understood. Most likely this celestial sword was too precious, causing them to harden their heart to kill them after snatching the treasure. At first, he had thought that this celestial sword was only an ordinary 5-star or 6-star pseudo-celestial tool, but now, perhaps it had reached 7 stars, 8 stars, or even 9 stars, or even 10 stars. But the more precious this thing was, the more dangerous it was for Ling Jianshui. His speed became faster and faster, and the void spirit space spread out, and he also accelerated the flow of time. Not to mention that Ling Han's speed far surpassed that of a dividing soul tier. He could even be ranked among the top in the Immortal Palace tier. In a short while, they arrived at another town, but shockingly, this town was filled with cultivators. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.